Chapter 890. Chu Xiu's voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The maze that the Blue Dragon Society had set up actually disappeared on its own, revealing the Blue Dragon Society's iconic palace that resembled a majestic azure dragon emerging from the sea. Luo Mo and Ling Yunzi looked at each other with a hint of astonishment in their eyes. Chu Xiu had actually taken the initiative to open the maze. Was he really prepared to fight them fair and square? Where did he get his confidence from? The moon-worshipping church would not make a move this time. Moreover, Yi Xiaonan was currently in seclusion. Apart from Yi Xiaonan, it would be useless for anyone else from the moon-worshipping church to make a move. Ling Yunzi looked at Rama. Abbot Rama, since they have already come forward to invite us, what about us? A faint smile appeared on Rama's lips. Of course, it would be impolite to refuse. As Ling Yunzi and Rama's orders were passed down, tens of thousands of people directly surged towards the Blue Dragon Society. The Blue Dragon Society, which had been sealed off for countless years, was now revealed to everyone for the first time. However, it was in such a way. In front of the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiu's blood-red robe fluttered in the wind. Facing the tens of thousands of martial artists from the Buddhist and Taoist lineages, Chu Xiu's expression did not change. Instead, he took the initiative to greet them. I never thought that there would be a day where I, Chu Xiu, would receive such treatment. It seems that everyone can't wait to kill me, Chu Xiu, one day. There were actually more martial artists watching the battle than the martial artists from the Buddhist and Taoist lineages. Seeing Chu Xiu's appearance, they had to admit that, at least in terms of temperament, Chu Xiu was really worthy of his current reputation. He already had the bearing of a big shot in the demonic path. If it were anyone else, they would either be afraid and flee in panic, or they would completely fall into hysterical madness. There were very few people who could be as calm as Chu Xiu. Ling Yunzi looked behind Chu Xiu. His expression was a little strange. He felt that something was wrong. Behind Chu Xiu was Wei Shuya, one of the 5 great sky fiends of the 9th Heaven Mountain. He also had Chu Xiu's good friend, Lu Fengxian, who had inherited the legacy of the devil god Lv1 Ho and was quite famous among the younger generation. There were also some people from the northern Yan Jinwu Hall and Guangzhong Torture Room, as well as people from the 9-branch hall under Chu Xiu's good friend Luo Fei Heng. In total, there were more than 10,000 of them. But to be honest, compared to the elites of the Chunyang Dao sect, Sabodhi Monastery, and the Taoist and Buddhist sects, Chu Xiu's subordinates could only be described as a motley crew. How could Chu Xiu resist the joint attack of Taoism and Buddhism just by relying on this motley crew? Had he already given up? At that moment, Rama said softly, "It's not that I want to kill you, but you already expected this day to come, didn't you? You can still be reborn after your body is shattered. This kind of mystic technique is described in some ancient books. I believe that it should be very easy for you to change to a new identity when your body is reconstructed. Chu Xiu is the enemy of the pugilistic world. You should know how much karma you are carrying. Jing Chonjizong killed you, but he also severed the karma on you. Unfortunately, you gave up this opportunity and killed Zhang Yunzi. You have to bear this karma again." What Rama said was actually something that most people in the pugilistic world were puzzled about. Although reconstructing one's body was a little shocking, it was not unheard of. When everyone thought that Chu Xiu was dead, Chu Xiu could totally change his identity and step into the pugilistic world openly. Unfortunately, he did not choose to do so. To others, it was not a wise choice. Looking up at the sky, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Master Rama is right. I do have another choice. It's not that I can't choose, but I don't want to choose. What exactly is a person living for? Some people serve Buddha for life. Some people study Taoist scriptures to seek the great Tao of the world." Chu Xiu pointed at himself and said, "In this life, I, Chu Xiu, only live for myself." Chu Xiu's Chu Xiu Xiu. Chu Xiu's words were not only said to Rama, but also to everyone present. It was also said to the existence in the dark. Regardless of whether he was Lin Yi from his previous life or whether he had some confusing connection with Duge Wei Wei, he, Chu Xiu, was Chu Xiu now. He could only be Chu Xiu. Rama gently raised his eyebrows. This legendary divine monk's every move seemed to have a kind of magical Buddha nature, which moved people's hearts and souls. However, I'm very curious. What are you going to use to stop me today? You can't win against the mysterious heaven and earth. Rama's tone was not arrogant. He was only stating a fact. The fact that Chu Xiao could fight Jingchan Zhizong to death and kill Zhang Yunzi was enough to prove Chu Xiao's strength. However, the mysterious heaven and earth and the true fire spirit refinement realm had always been two different realms. The former was already a supreme existence that stood at the peak of the pugilistic world. Chu Xiao lightly said, "It's true that I can't defeat you, Master Rama. Therefore, your opponent today is not me." As he said that, Chu Xiao shouted behind him, "City Master Shang, stop eating. It's your turn." Shang Tianliang was wearing a brand new black and gold robe. However, he was still holding a roasted chicken in his hand. He kept chewing on it and swallowed it in a few bites. He even wiped his greasy hands on his robe. He did not look like a powerhouse at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. He looked like an old man that was about to starve to death. In reality, that was indeed the case. What was the mysterious heaven and earth realm in a place like Ludu that was like hell on earth? Bool ****. The black storm would not let you go just because you were at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Apart from being slightly stronger, Shang Tianliang was no different from anyone else. Other than thinking about how to live, he also had to think about how to let the people in Merchant City live. After coming here, Shang Tianliang knew that he was here to be a fighter, so he did not ask any questions. He had been eating and drinking for the past few days. In fact, Shang Tianliang was not only eating and drinking to satisfy his insatiable appetite. He also wanted to recover some primordial qi. Although Shang Tianliang was at the mysterious heaven and earth realm, he had been staying in a place like Ludu for a long time. His true qi could not be replenished. Some parts of his body had been damaged, and even his meridians had withered. While he was eating and drinking, Shang Tianliang was also relying on the essence qi in the food to repair the flaws in his body. He did not waste any time. The people around him had strange expressions. Was Chu Xiao going to rely on this old man to resist divine monk Rama? He must have lost his mind, right? Everyone looked like they were watching a joke. Only Rama frowned. After a while he said in a deep voice, "I don't know you." The others could not see anything wrong with Shang Tianliang. Although Shang Tianliang did not have to worry about the consumption of true qi in the outside world, he still subconsciously restrained the true qi in his body. However, Rama, who was also at the mysterious heaven and earth realm, could see Shang Tianliang's background. There were only a few mysterious heaven and earth realms in the pugilistic world. Even if there were some old monsters who had not appeared in the pugilistic world for decades, Rama could not match up to him. Shang Tianliang grinned and said, "I don't know you either. Are you a monk? Interesting. Very interesting." There might be people who practiced Buddhist martial arts in Ludu, but there were definitely no monks. When everyone opened their eyes, they did not know if they could see the sun tomorrow. You go and tell people that all lives are equal and the Buddha is merciful? Go to hell. You would definitely be beaten to death on the spot. Therefore, Shang Tianliang really felt that the profession of being a monk was very interesting. However, he did not say much to Rama because he knew that he was here to be a fighter. Since he was going to be a fighter, he did not care about anything else. There was only one word. Fight. As Shang Tianliang's voice fell, the ground under his feet cracked. His body was like a cannonball as he blasted straight at Rama. Using his palm as a knife, in the next moment, a majestic knife energy condensed around Shang Tianliang. It was as if his entire body had become a knife. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was absorbed around his body. From afar, one could not see Shang Tianliang's figure at all. One could only see the huge knife light slashing towards Rama. Rama chanted, and a strange and profound syllable was uttered. In the next moment, a golden light flashed in front of him. Shang Tianliang's blade slashed on the light screen, and all the light from the blade was absorbed by it. Break! Shang Tianliang shouted in a low voice. His hands tore apart. Powerful spiritual energy of heaven and earth erupted from his hands and directly tore the light screen apart. He stepped forward and punched. A majestic spiritual energy of heaven and earth poured into Shang Tianliang's body, causing his punch to be like a spear that could shatter the sky. It was incomparably sharp and extraordinary. In Ludu, Shang Tianliang was in existence at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Not only could he not use too much spiritual energy, he could not even use a trace of the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Now that he was in the outside world, Shang Tianliang finally understood what true power was. This was the power of the Shang ancestors as described in the ancient books. This was also the power realm that he should be at. In Ludu, Shang Tianliang did not like to fight. It should be said that every person in Ludu did not like to fight. However, their killing intent were stronger than anyone else's. This was because it was not a battle, but a life of life and death. However, after fighting with Rama this time, Shang Tianliang understood what true fighting intent was. Facing the spear that seemed like it could pierce through the sky, Rama used the flower-picking seal. The seemingly weak Buddhist seal caused the huge spear that Shang Tianliang had condensed to start shattering. Rama gently tapped Shang Tianliang's fist with a finger. However, Shang Tianliang's entire body was blasted away. He smashed into the ground and created a huge pit that was more than 30 meters wide. The Buddha used the flower-picking seal. All the magical powers were hidden in silence. Although Rama seemed to have blasted Shang Tianliang away easily, in the next moment, Shang Tianliang had already climbed out of the pit. He was not injured at all. He even shouted, "Awesome!" In the next moment, his figure appeared in front of Rama again. His hands were like dragon claws that tore through everything. He continued to attack Rama. Chapter 891. In the fight between Shang Tianliang and Luo Mo, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Luo Mo had the absolute advantage. Moreover, in the green dew space, Shang Tianliang had not even fought with people of the same realm. After all, there were only 2 or 3 people who could reach the mysterious realm in that place, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Even when fighting with Luo Mo, Shang Tianliang was filled with an extremely uncomfortable feeling. This was the first time he had fought in a place with such an abundance of heaven and earth essence. This made it extremely difficult for him to unleash his strength. Therefore, everyone could only see that every time Shang Tianliang charged forward with an extraordinary aura, he would be sent flying by Luo Mo. However, as the fight went on, Luo Mo frowned slightly. This existence in the mysterious realm in front of him was very strange. His opponent's martial arts skills were extremely shaky, and his fighting style was also extremely strange. In any case, he was not considered strong. At least, among all the mysterious realm experts that Luo Mo knew, this person's strength should be the lowest. However, there was one thing that was extremely difficult to deal with, and that was that he was very resistant to beatings. That's right. Compared to Luo Mo and the other mysterious realm experts, Shang Tianliang's only advantage was his resistance to beatings. In a place like Green Dew, Shang Tianliang had constantly tempered his body. It could be said that even if he did not deliberately cultivate a body-refining technique, in terms of the strength of his body, not many people could surpass Shang Tianliang. In addition, Shang Tianliang's willpower and physique had been tempered in an extremely harsh environment. Even though Shang Tianliang's combat strength was much lower than Luo Mo's, it was still impossible for Luo Mo to defeat Shang Tianliang in a short period of time. At that moment, among the spectators, there were 2 people looking at Shang Tianliang in shock. These 2 people were Eastern Chi's LV Zhanlu and White Tiger Hall's Helian Changfeng. LV Zhanlu even shouted in a low voice, "Lunatic! Chu Xiao is a lunatic." Others might not know Shang Tianliang, but LV Zhanlu and Helian Changfeng knew him. They never thought that Chu Xiao would actually be able to enter that place again and bring out the people from that space. The last time they entered Green City, they were just passers-by. They didn't carefully investigate Green City's roots like Chu Xiao did. However, they were able to guess that none of those who were able to grow up in an extremely adverse environment like Green City were easy to deal with. Once this group of people escaped, the sudden appearance of such a force would definitely be a huge blow to the current Jianghu. Chu Xiao was definitely a madman. For his own benefit, what else could he not do? When the other Taoist and Buddhist cultivators saw how intense the fight between Rama and Shang Tianliang was, they roared and wanted to start the fight immediately. Ling Yunzi sighed and waved his hand. The people of Chunyang Dao sect immediately quietened down. Looking at Chu Xiao, Ling Yunzi said in a low voice, "Actually, I don't like senior brother Zhang Yunzi because he is too strict. I remember when we were young, senior brother Zhang Yunzi was in charge of watching over us when we were writing Dao scriptures from memory. If we made a mistake, we would get hit with a board. Later on, I became the sect leader of Chunyang Dao sect and my status was finally higher than senior brother Zhang Yunzi's. However, I still don't like him because he represents the most paranoid and decadent side of Chunyang Dao sect." The other disciples of Chunyang Dao sect looked at each other. They didn't know why the sect leader would criticize their own people in front of Chu Xiao. However, Ling Yunzi changed the topic. He slowly pulled out the Dao sword that was flickering with pure yang qi and said in a low voice. However, senior brother Zhang Yunzi is senior brother Zhang Yunzi after all. He is my senior brother and the leader of the 6 spiritual masters of Tiangang Hall of Chunyang Dao sect. You should know how the entire Chunyang Dao sect will react after you kill him. Sometimes, there is no right or wrong in the pugilistic world, only what should be done and what should not be done. I haven't been out in the pugilistic world for decades. Today, I want to see what the young heroes who stand at the peak of the pugilistic world look like. I want to see if there are really talented people in every generation and the new generation surpasses the old. As Ling Yunzi's voice fell, the glaring pure yang qi around him rose into the air. It was as if he had returned to the days when he was young, when he had destroyed a large devil sect with his own strength. Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and also took out the heavenly war case. With a slight sound of gears, the heavenly war case instantly turned into the peerless heavenly saber. Ling Yunzi was somewhat beyond Chu Xiao's expectations. In his imagination, Chu Xiao thought that Ling Yunzi should be the same kind of person as Zhang Yunzi. However, when he saw Ling Yunzi, Chu Xiao realized that he was wrong. The other party was not Zhang Yunzi, but a person who understood. He knew where the real shortcomings of Chunyang Dao sect were, but he couldn't change it. That was because in the entire Chunyang Dao sect, the powerful people were all stubborn and rotten like Zhang Yunzi. Not only could he not change Chunyang Dao sect, but he also had to follow the rules of Chunyang Dao sect. For example, today, as the sect master of Chunyang Dao sect, he had to stand here and fight with Chu Xiao. Otherwise, Chunyang Dao sect would definitely fall into more internal strife because of personal feelings. Just as Ling Yunzi said, for Ling Yunzi, there was no right or wrong in this battle. There was only what should be done and what shouldn't be done. The situation had already reached this point, and it was too late for both sides to retreat. Therefore, while holding the peerless heavenly saber, Chu Xiao only spat out one word: kill. As soon as he said that, Wei Shuya and the others behind Chu Xiao all rushed out. At that moment, the internal array of the Blue Dragon Society had already been activated. Green radiance circulated, and with a dragon's roar, the green brilliance struck down like thunder. A unity of heaven and man realm martial artist who couldn't dodge in time was directly vaporized by the green radiance, leaving not even a trace behind. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. None of them could have imagined that the Azure Dragon Society's spell formation would be this powerful. At this moment, everyone recalled the roots of the Blue Dragon Society. It was a part of the Four Symbol sect in the past, and the place where the Blue Dragon Society was located was the ruins of the Four Symbol sect in the past. Since ancient times, when it came to array Dao, if the Black Tortoise branch of the Four Symbol sect claimed to be the best, no one would dare to say that they were second. After the great calamity of the ancient times, the array at the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society had actually been almost destroyed. Thankfully, the forefathers of the Azure Dragon Society were far-sighted. They invited the Formation Dao Grandmasters of the Black Tortoise Society to repair the Azure Dragon Society's formations. After several generations of effort, they were finally able to restore the Azure Dragon Society's formations to their former glory days. Among the four spirits, only the Blue Dragon Society had a grudge against the White Tiger Hall. As for the Black Tortoise sect and the Vermilion Bird Pavilion, one only liked to set up arrays and refine various mechanical parts, while the other only knew how to refine medicine. Therefore, they didn't have any grudges against each other. As the #1 assassin organization in the world, the Blue Dragon Society had a deep financial foundation, so they could afford to invite the Black Tortoise sect to help them so many times. Over the years, the Blue Dragon Society had killed countless people. Although they were only hired assassins, there were still some sects that hated the Blue Dragon Society to the bone. After so many years, the Blue Dragon Society hadn't been annihilated, and it could be said that the array was a big part of the reason why the Blue Dragon Society hadn't been wiped out. Originally, Chu Xiao's side was in an absolutely disadvantageous situation, but with the help of the array, he wouldn't be defeated for a while. At this time in the field, Ling Yunzi's body was shining with dazzling pure yang astral energy. He walked towards Chu Xiao step by step, and with every step, the pure yang astral energy under his feet was dazzling, but there was also the radiance of the stars shining, as if he was connected to the stars in the sky, condensing a layer of resplendent starry veil around Ling Yunzi. Astral steps. Lu Jiang, he called out in a low voice from the blood soul bead, and with a solemn expression he said, "Chu Xiu kid, be careful. The strength of this Taoist isn't that simple. Astral steps, worship the radiance of the Big Dipper, and welcome the power of the gods of the stars." This is a secret technique of Taoism, and there have been many similar techniques among the branches of Taoism, but there aren't many that can really attract the power of the gods of the stars. Without Lu Jianghe saying it, Chu Xiu also knew that the strength of the Chunyang Dao sect leader, who hadn't come out for decades, was infinitely close to the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm. Ling Yunzi slashed down with the pure yang as the sun, and the radiance of the stars circled around him. His entire body was like heaven and earth. That slash wasn't a murderous intent, but a kind of Dao operation rule between heaven and earth. It was like Dao connotation, but it could modify the rules within a few miles. In an instant, Chu Xiu's body was already pitch black, and only the great sun and the radiance of the stars were rotating in front of him, crashing down on him. Chu Xiu also didn't expect Ling Yunzi's strength to be at such a level. When he attacked, he already had a bit of the aura of a heaven and earth elemental enlightenment expert who could control the power of heaven and earth. With a low shout, the peerless heavenly blade slashed down, and the endless demonic chi sword radiance scattered in all directions. The sea-breaking blade fell, and the extreme strength of the blade was even a little too much for the heavenly Dao warcase to bear, and there was a strange sound of mechanical movement. The blade of the seven limits tore the darkness in front of him apart, and the demonic chi and the pure yang chi intertwined and constantly exploded in mid-air. At this time, Ling Yunzi made a Taoist seal with his hand, and a strange syllable came out of his mouth. Taoist patterns appeared in the starry sky, and layer after layer suppressed Chu Xiu's body, instantly extinguishing the demonic chi around him. In less than 3 moves, Chu Xiu had already fallen into an absolute disadvantage. The surrounding people who were watching the battle were also amazed. Some of the older martial arts practitioners still vaguely remembered how amazing the leader of the Chunyang Dao sect, Ling Yunzi, was when he was young. Unfortunately, after taking over the position of the leader, he became more and more low-key, and even didn't appear in Jianghu anymore. However, it seemed that the past few decades didn't erase Ling Yunzi's talent and combat strength. Instead, it increased his realm by another half a step. It was estimated that it wouldn't take long for another supreme expert of the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm to appear in the Dao sect. At this time, Chu Xiu could only consider himself unlucky to encounter Ling Yunzi at his peak. Chapter 892. Even Chu Xiu had no choice but to admit that Ling Yunzi's strength was almost unparalleled. He had half a foot in the threshold of the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Chu Xiu had fought with the warriors of the Chunyang Dao sect many times, so he had a better understanding of the warriors of the Chunyang Dao sect. For example, Zhang Yunzi was a standard warrior of the Chunyang Dao sect. His cultivation was above the word pure yang, and he had exerted the power of the pure yang gang qi to the extreme. Ling Yunzi's pure yang gang qi was not inferior to Zhang Yunzi's, but he was stronger than Zhang Yunzi in his comprehension of the word Dao. The Dao lineage cultivated the truth of the great Dao of heaven and earth, yin and yang, and all things. The pure yang lineage exerted the power of yang to the extreme, but the power of yang was also a kind of great Dao. Ling Yunzi's comprehension of the pure yang Dao was close to the level of returning to the natural state. If he comprehended the Dao, all the Daos would be in his heart. However, no matter how strong Ling Yunzi was, Chu Xiu would not allow himself to be captured. Moreover, Ling Yunzi was not strong enough to make Chu Xiu have no room to resist. The moment he was suppressed by the Dao power, Chu Xiu's body shone with endless blood qi, and the sky was filled with blood shadows that rushed toward Ling Yunzi. Chu Xiu had evaluated the blood shadow great technique as being extremely powerful among warriors of the same level, but its power would be greatly reduced when facing warriors who were stronger than him. Therefore, it was a martial technique with extremely low growth potential. However, although Ling Yunzi was strong, he had not reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm. The sky full of blood shadows attacked with all kinds of cultivation techniques, and the power was even more wild in the endless blood light. However, Ling Yunzi only gently stretched out a finger, and a golden light bloomed. The next moment, the golden light turned into scorching pure yang gang qi, and like the sun, it swallowed all the blood shadows. However, at this moment, as the blood shadows scattered, a small transparent figure directly attacked Ling Yunzi. It turned out to be a small person the size of a palm, holding a long saber. It was the figure of Chu Xiu. The small person carried an extremely strong primordial spirit pressure, and instantly passed through the pure yang gang qi. When Ling Yunzi reacted, it was already above his head. All along, everyone had been attracted by Chu Xiu's extremely powerful martial skills. After successfully cultivating the true fire body, everyone knew that Chu Xiu's physical body was extremely powerful. Therefore, many people had forgotten that Chu Xiu's attainment in primordial spirit secret techniques. The small person was formed from the purest power of the primordial spirit. There were no transformations at all. When the primordial spirit slashed down, Chu Xiu was betting on the fact that Ling Yunzi's primordial spirit was not as strong as his. In an instant, endless starlight shone in front of Ling Yunzi, but it was shattered layer by layer in front of the Qi's qi. Obviously, the star god's qi could not withstand such a strong primordial spirit power. Moreover, the primordial spirit was invisible, and it was extremely fast. Even if Ling Yunzi wanted to dodge, he could not. He sighed and pinched a seal with both hands. In his mind, endless pure Yanggang qi bloomed, and the shadow of a sitting golden Taoist appeared. The golden light shone brightly, but this was not just pure Yanggang qi, but also pure primordial spirit power. The battle of primordial spirit was more dangerous than the battle of ordinary gang qi and physical body. Strong primordial spirit fluctuations erupted because of the collision, and the incomparably strong force even formed a silent sound wave. The sound was so loud that some of the spectating martial artists even let out muffled groans, their minds shaken by this wave. Under the collision of primordial spirits, Chu Xiu's face turned pale, but he also took the opportunity to break free from the suppression of those Tao patterns. With both hands forming a seal, pure devil qi erupted from Chu Xiu's hands, and a devil qi longbow condensed in his hands. With one hand holding the bow and the other holding the bowstring, the triple city extinguishing arrow burst out in an instant. Moreover, this was not the end. The moment the triple city extinguishing arrow was shot, the heavenly Tao warcase in Chu Xiu's hand shook and turned into the Ask the Heavens tyrant spear. The dense true fire of inner qi burned around Chu Xiu's body. When he thrust out his spear, he did not use the spear technique of the black tortoise true technique. Instead, he used pure strength, as if he wanted to tear the heavens apart. The pure Yang Dao sword in Ling Yunzi's hand slashed down horizontally. His movements were extremely slow, but there seemed to be countless afterimages. In the next moment, the afterimage transformed into 64 swords condensed from pure Yang astral energy, forming a pure Yang sword formation. Just as Chu Xiu's triple link city annihilation arrow was about to land, it enveloped him within. The powerful pure Yang astral energy completely negated the triple link city annihilation arrow's power of nirvana. In the past, Dugu Weiwei could destroy the entire Iron Emperor castle with this arrow, but that was because Dugu Weiwei had enough power to drive the almost endless power of nirvana. Now, although Chu Xiu's arrow was still overbearing, the power of nirvana was not endless. Under the strangulation of the pure Yang sword array, it was constantly being reduced. Ling Yunzi took a step forward, and his sleeves covered the sky. With a sudden swing, he felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. With a loud bang, it landed on Chu Xiu's heaven-seeking tyrannical spear. The heaven-seeking tyrannical spear formed by the heavenly Tao warcase was smashed into pieces by the sleeves. Chu Xiu waved his hand, and countless mechanisms condensed into a long halberd in his hand. The great halberd smashed down crazily, but Ling Yunzi did not have a sword in his hand. He actually used his fists and feet to fight against Chu Xiu's strong body that had been tempered by the true fire. Even though Chu Xiu's black tortoise true technique was ever-changing, he still could not do anything to Ling Yunzi. The battle between Chu Xiu and Ling Yunzi attracted almost everyone's attention. The battle between the two of them was what could be called exciting. Although Rama and Shang Tianliang were both at the mystic enlightenment realm, the battle between the two of them was actually quite boring. It was almost like a mad rush, then being slapped away, and then continuing to rush forward. On the other hand, the battle between Chu Xiu and Ling Yunzi seemed to have unleashed all kinds of martial arts in the world to the extreme. Chu Xiu's current combat power could no longer be measured by the realm. Moreover, he had so many powerful martial arts, it was simply shocking. However, what was even more shocking was Ling Yunzi's side. When it came to martial arts, he had cultivated his extremely powerful pure Yanggang qi and various Dao sect secret techniques to the extreme. He could completely crush Chu Xiu with just his strength. On the other hand, Chu Xiu took a different approach. He directly used the power of his primordial spirit to fight head-on, and Ling Yunzi was also not afraid. Although he had not cultivated the primordial spirit secret technique, the pure Yanggang Qi of Chunyang Dao sect could automatically strengthen his primordial spirit while he was cultivating. No matter what Ling Yunzi's realm was, he would not be at a disadvantage if he fought head-on with the primordial spirit. However, what was even more surprising was that although Ling Yunzi's close combat attacks were not as varied as Chu Xiu's Black Tortoise True technique, his physical strength was also extremely shocking. Ling Yunzi's physical strength was also extremely shocking. Simply put, this person was an existence with no weaknesses. While Chu Xiu and Ling Yunzi were fighting intensely, the other people on the battlefield were not idle either. Although there were fewer people on Chu Xiu's side, their quality was not bad. For example, Wei Shuya, Elder Wei. In the past, as one of the 5 great sky fiends of the 9th Sky Mountain, Wei Shuya was only a supporting character in the battle. His strength was also the weakest. It was only because they were like-minded that he became sworn brothers with the other 4. However, so many years had passed. Although Wei Shuya's cultivation had not reached the realm of Donghuang Tai, it was not too far away. In particular, his demonic arts inheritance was passed down to him by the other 4 of the 5 great sky fiends of the 9th Sky Mountain. Although Wei Shuya was now old and his qi and blood had stagnated, he would probably never be able to step into the mysterious heaven and earth realm in his lifetime. However, among those of the same level, there were still few who could match him. At that moment, Wei Shuya was surrounded by domineering demonic qi. He was fighting alone against 3 true fire spirit refinement realm martialists from Sabodhi Zen Temple. Previously, Wei Shuya had not fought many times. Even during the great battle on Floating Jade Mountain, he had not used his full strength. It was only now that Wei Shuya was fighting with his full strength that people could see how terrifying this person, who had been so famous in the past, was. Wei Shuya used several demonic arts one after another, and it was a feast for the eyes. Moreover, Wei Shuya's martial arts did not actually require weapons. However, at that moment, 3 weapons appeared in his hands one after another. The demonic sword was swung freely, and as the sword qi was wantonly, it seemed to cut through the void. As the demonic sword slashed down, it could be said to be domineering. An extremely powerful aura erupted from his seemingly frail body. Finally, the demonic spear shattered the sky, and that spear directly shattered one of his opponent's arms. Only some of the older martialists present could recognize that the weapons that Wei Shuya was using were the weapons of 3 of the 5 great sky demons of the 9 Sky Mountain. One of them did not use a weapon, and he was proficient in primordial spirit secret techniques. It could be said that Wei Shuya's existence was a continuation of the 5 great sky demons of the 9 Sky Mountain. He alone contained so many martial arts, and over the years, he had probably mastered and integrated all these martial arts into one. If one said that Chu Xiu's Black Tortoise True technique had been forcibly integrated by that ancient martialist with his extremely strong martial arts attainments, then Wei Shuya's current existence was a continuation of the 5 great sky demons of the 9 Sky Mountain. Right now, Wei Shuya was relying on his longing for his 4 brothers and sheer willpower to treat their martial arts legacies as his own, forcefully merging them into his body. Wei Shuya did not rely on comprehension, but perseverance. It could even be said that if he had not chosen to integrate the martial arts of his 4 brothers back then and had instead focused on studying his own martial arts, he might have been able to break through to the mysterious heaven and earth realm by now. Moreover, in the entire Yinma lineage, not only Wei Shuya was outstanding, but the people that Wei Shuya valued were also outstanding. This was the case with Chu Wuji. Chu Wuji's previous strength had reached the half-step real fire spirit refinement. He was definitely a top existence among the martial arts grandmaster. At this time, Chu Wuji also began to fight desperately. He actually took the initiative to find an old Taoist of Chunyang Dao sect. He fought real fire spirit refinement with real pellet state, and they were evenly matched. Chapter 893. Before Chu Xiu appeared, Wei Shuya focused on training Chu Wuji in the Yinma clan. However, compared with Chu Xiu, Chu Wuji had a shortcoming, that was, he was not the orthodox descendant of the Yinma clan. Therefore, Chu Wuji could only be Wei Shuya's subordinate. He couldn't become the heir of the entire Yinma clan, and he couldn't be the face of the clan. Although the Yinma clan had little to do with the Kunlun devil cult now, the title was the title. If you didn't have this title, you couldn't sit in this position. But Chu Xiu was different. Although his identity as the orthodox descendant of the Kunlun devil cult was subject to discussion, at least it was recognized by everyone. Of course, Chu Wuji didn't want this position. He was a sensible person. After joining the Yinma clan, he saw the essence of the Yinma clan. Therefore, in the entire Yinma clan, he was only loyal to one person, Wei Shuya. Chu Wuji wasn't risking his life here for Chu Xiu. Rather, it would be more accurate to say that he was fighting for Wei Shuya. He was fighting for the benefits of Wei Shuya's bloodline. And right now, Chu Xiu was representing his bloodline. As a real pellet state, he fought against the real fire god refinement state. Chu Wuji was suppressed from the beginning to counterattack. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that if this person didn't die after this battle, he would definitely reach the real fire god refinement state. In addition to Wei Shuya, Lu Fengxian's performance was also extremely outstanding. Lu Fengxian's opponent was the junior's junior uncle Shi Yunzi of Chunyang Dao sect, who was the youngest disciple in the entire Chunyang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi's strength was originally unfathomable, and no one even knew that he had advanced to the real pellet state. For so many years, not only the people of Jianghu, but even the people of Chunyang Dao sect didn't know much about Shi Yunzi's strength. They all thought that the previous sect master was old and confused, so he accepted Shi Yunzi as his disciple before he died. In the end, when Shi Yunzi revealed his true strength, everyone was convinced of his strength. This person actually had a pure Yang Dao body, which was why he was more compatible with the pure Yang divine weapon. Even if he did not cultivate all day long as he stayed in the atmosphere of the Chunyang Dao sect, his pure Yang Gang Qi would automatically accumulate and his cultivation would gradually increase. It was just like cheating. Of course, Lu Fengxian was cheating even more than Shi Yunzi. Sometimes, luck itself was the greatest cheating method. These two people could be said to be the kind of existence that couldn't be measured by common sense. One of them held the pure Yang divine weapon of the former ancestor Lu, and the other held the unparalleled divine weapon of the ancient demon god Lu Wenho. Even their external divine weapons were extremely similar. Therefore, when these two people fought, they even displayed a power that made most of the true fire spirit refinement state cultivators feel ashamed. However, after the two sides fought for a long time, it was still Lu Fengxian who had the upper hand in the end. It was not because Shi Yunzi's cultivation was weak, nor was it because the pure Yang divine weapon was not as good as the unparalleled divine weapon, but because Shi Yunzi's fighting intent could not be compared with Lu Fengxian. Looking at Lu Fengxian, who was wielding the unparalleled divine weapon and exerting the power of the demon god unparalleled halberd to the extreme, even his handsome appearance began to distort in the boundless demonic qi. Shi Yunzi was forced to retreat step by step. His hands were numb, but he could only smile bitterly. Lu Fengxian's fighting intent was unparalleled, but Shi Yunzi had no fighting intent. To be more precise, this battle should not have been fought in the first place. What was the current state of the Chunyang Dao sect? It was the weakest period in thousands of years. There was no new generation to take over, and the future was unclear. At times like this, the Chunyang Dao sect should have kept a low profile and accumulated its own strength so that it could plan for the future. In the end, as the leader of the 6 spiritual masters, Chang Yunzi became enemies for no reason, and in the end, he was killed. His death had indirectly agitated everyone in the pure Yang Daoist sect. They had no choice but to launch the righteous and demonic wars to kill Chu Xiu. Ling Yunzi was a sensible person, and so was Shi Yunzi. They were forced to participate in this war, and they had to fight even if they did not want to. On the other hand, on Chu Xiu's side, he swore to protect his own strength, and Chu Xiu was Lu Fengxian's brother who had gone through life and death together. How could he not fight to the death for Chu Xiu? It could be said that the will of the two sides were not even on the same level. It was too difficult to make Shi Yunzi as passionate as Lu Fengxian. Among the crowd, they were also surprised to see the strength that Lu Fengxian had displayed. In fact, this person was not very outstanding among the young generation. Although he had the inheritance of Marquis Lv Wenho, there were too many monstrous talents in Chu Xiu's generation. Just Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, and Zhong Xian alone had attracted the attention of most people. There was also Ying Bailu, the unparalleled young master who kept a low profile but was even more famous, and Feng Qishao, the sword Dao genius. Lu Fengxian had never fought for it, and his reputation had always been built naturally. It was not until now that the crowd realized that this person was actually so amazing. At the same time, some people who knew the inside story also shook their heads slightly. The stupidest thing that the Yu New Palace had done was to use such an amazing talent like this as an object. Such a person was used to rope in, okay? It was a pity that Lu Fengxian was a good friend of Chu Xiu, and it was the kind of friendship that went through life and death together. If Chu Xiu couldn't survive this time, perhaps Lu Fengxian would also be buried in it. On a barren hill not far from the crowd, there was a high vantage point. It was also a good place to watch the battle, but there were not many people gathered here. The reason was very simple. This place had been occupied by someone, and it was someone that most people couldn't afford to offend. The Jiannan king of Sword King City, Duge Li, stood with his hands behind his back. Beside him, Feng Qi Xiao sat cross-legged, pretending to watch the battle carefully. However, when Duge Li wasn't paying attention, he would take out an exquisite wine gourd and take a sip. Seventh young master, what do you think? At this time, Duge Li suddenly spoke, scaring Feng Qi Xiao so much that his hand trembled, and quite a bit of wine spilled on his hand. This made him feel conflicted. Should he lick it or not? It seemed like he hadn't washed his hands after peeing just now. Hearing Duge Li's words, Feng Qi Xiao subconsciously said, "How else can I look at it? With my eyes, of course." Duge Li glared at him. "I'm asking you, what do you think of this battle?" Feng Qi Xiao hurriedly sat up straight, coughed, and said, "To be honest, in my opinion, this battle is simply inexplicable. Until now, no one knows why that old monk, Jingchan Jizong, wanted to kill Chu Xiu. This time, the Sabodi monastery didn't say anything about it either. They only used the excuse of killing evil demons. In any case, I don't believe it. If they really wanted to kill evil demons, would they have stayed in the moon-worshipping sect until now? Everything started from that inexplicable battle. Moreover, with Chu Xiu's personality, he will endure silently, but he won't swallow his blood. Therefore, revenge is inevitable for him. This battle is very normal." Duge Li paused, then suddenly said, "I know that Chu Xiu is your good friend. From your tone, it seems like you're on Chu Xiu's side. However, seventh young master, you have to remember that you're the future successor of Sword King City. If Chu Xiu was still a junior of the Yinma clan and you guys couldn't pull him away, we would have turned a blind eye. In any case, you've crossed the line more than once. But now, look at Chu Xiu's power. How is he still a junior? He already has the attitude of a tyrant of the demonic path. From the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult until now, apart from the moon-worshipping sect and the 9 heavenly mountains' 5 great sky fiends, his power is the greatest. If you continue to be involved with him at this time, I'm afraid you'll attract the dissatisfaction of some righteous sections." Feng Qi Xiao raised his eyebrows and said, "Ancestor, you're already so old, why are you still like that bunch of ox noses from the Chunyang Dao sect? Why do you think everything is black and white?" Duge Li said indifferently, "I'm not that pedantic. Even when I first stepped into the pugilistic world, I didn't believe in black and white stupid words. But you should know that in this pugilistic world, there will be evil, and there will be yin and yang. You don't have to choose black and white, but you still have to choose a side. Just like the 2 blades on the sword, you can only use one of them to hurt people. Right now the righteous path's blade is sharper, so even if my Sword King City doesn't belong to the righteous path, we still have to stand on the righteous path side. Unless Duge Weiwei reappears and changes the situation, it's already clear which side my Sword King City should stand on." Feng Qi Xiao's expression became a bit serious. He said in a deep voice, "Why must we choose? Can't my Sword King City choose our own path? Ancestor, you seem to have forgotten one thing. A sword is used to stab. Even without the 2 blades, it can still hurt people." Duge Li glared at him. "You're talking back. If I tell you to watch, then watch carefully. Although that Chu Xiu's methods are indeed mysterious and he is still able to revive after being blasted into smithereens, with Luo Mo's help this time around, he will undoubtedly be defeated. Even if he is able to revive once more, the foundation under him will definitely be destroyed." Feng Qi Xiao narrowed his eyes. "I don't think so. I understand Chu Xiu. He's never an impulsive person, nor is he someone who thinks too highly of himself. Since he dared to come here and accept the challenge, he definitely has more tricks up his sleeves. Although I don't know what he'll do, I don't believe he'll lose so easily. Ancestor, why don't we make a bet? If Chu Xiu survives this time, you won't be able to confine me for a year. I also want the Western Domain's Moon Pond's Drunken Moon Grape Wine to brew 10. No. 100 jars. On the other hand, if I lose, I'll take the initiative to enter the Sword Pavilion and enter seclusion for a year to practice sword arts. What do you think? Dougali looked at Feng Qixiao in surprise. Why was he so confident in Chu Xiu? However, there were very few opportunities for this kid to stay in the sect and cultivate, so Dougali simply nodded and said, "All right, I'll bet with you." Feng Qixiao looked in the direction of the fight between Chu Xiu and Ling Yunzi and muttered, Brother Chu, my year of happiness will depend on you." Chapter 894. Feng Qixiao had confidence in Chu Xiu, but it did not mean that others had confidence in Chu Xiu. Many people could see that Chu Xiu's side seemed to be unable to hold on any longer. Ling Yunzi was suppressing Chu Xiu with his half-step heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm strength. Although the others could still have some advantages, Chu Xiu's side was not strong to begin with. Even with the help of the Blue Dragon Society's array formation, the lower-level warriors were already losing ground and could only barely hold on. Ling Yunzi's body shone with pure yang starlight. With a casual punch, the powerful force sent Chu Xiu flying. Looking at Chu Xiu, Ling Yunzi said in a low voice, "What are you still holding on for? This battle should be over. If we continue to persist, it will only end in a situation where both sides will suffer. My Chunyang Dao sect will lose a lot of strength, but can you bear to see something happen to your subordinates? Can you bear to see something happen to your good friend, Lu Fengxian, who fought to the death for you?" Although Ling Yunzi had the upper hand at the moment, he did not look down on Chu Xiu with the attitude of a victor. He did not declare that he was the victor and ask him to surrender. What Ling Yunzi said just now was the truth. Regardless of the outcome of this battle, it would actually be a lose-lose situation if they really continued to fight. Even if they killed Chu Xiu and Chunyang Dao sect regained its reputation, Chong Yunzi would not come back to life. More warriors would die in this third war between the righteous and demonic paths. Therefore, even if he stopped a moment earlier, he could still save a lot of losses. At this moment, Chu Xiu did not seem to panic at all. He merely said indifferently, "Who said that I can't hold on any longer?" Sect leader Ling Yunzi, "I'm afraid the one who can't hold on later should be you. Haven't you noticed that something is missing here?" Hearing this, Ling Yunzi suddenly realized something. For the first time, the expression on his face changed. At this moment, in front of Hudong County's vast Sun Peak, groups of Blue Dragon Society assassins wearing black clothes, black iron masks, and black iron conical bamboo hats were all gathered here. 90% of the martial artists in the Blue Dragon Society headquarters and all of the elite martial artists of the 36 Big Dipper divisions were present, numbering in the thousands. All the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society were existences that had taken hundreds of lives in their hands. The killing intent on their bodies was incomparably dense. With so many people gathered together, it had even reached the point of affecting the weather. The vast Sun Peak that was originally clear and boundless was now covered in dark clouds, abnormally terrifying. In front of the Pure Yang Palace, a middle-aged Taoist priest looked at the dense black figures below and felt the soaring killing intent. He was almost out of breath by the powerful momentum. Didn't the sect master bring people to destroy the Blue Dragon Society? Then why were so many elites of the Blue Dragon Society still gathered here? Behind the middle-aged Taoist priest was a group of young Taoist priests. They were all clamoring to open the mountain gate and behead this group of villains. But at this time, the middle-aged Taoist priest shouted angrily, "All of you shut up!" This group of young Taoist priests were newborn calves that were not afraid of tigers. They knew the terror of the elite assassins of the Blue Dragon Society. With Ling Yunzi's departure, he almost took away all the elites in the sect. At present, there were only a few people left in the sect like him who did not have strong combat power. Usually, they could only read Tao scriptures for some Taoist children and the like. Although the Pure Yang Palace or the entire vast Sun Peak had countless arrays, but in the face of so many Blue Dragon Society assassins, although the array could operate automatically, its power could not be compared with its peak state. The middle-aged Taoist priest roared, "Quickly go and activate the array." Several disciples hurriedly went to activate the array, and in an instant, the entire vast Sun Peak shone brightly. But the complexion of the middle-aged Taoist priest was getting worse and worse. A part of the array in the Pure Yang Palace also needed to be controlled by people. But at present, There were only Taoist priests like him who had no combat power left in the Pure Yang Palace. There were also some young disciples who had not even left the mountain gate. How could they control this kind of thing? So after activating the array, the middle-aged Taoist priest immediately began to use a secret method to send a message to Ling Yunzi and the others for help. At the foot of the mountain, Duanmu Qianshan raised his head and looked at the vast sun peak. Perhaps even he did not expect that one day, the Blue Dragon Society would dare to attack the Chunyang Dao sect. Of course, it was not that the Blue Dragon Society had not done this before. Previously, Butian-nan even dared to attack the Great Light Temple. But that time, it was purely because Butian-nan had gone crazy. This time, they only made their move after going through Chu Xiu's careful calculations. To be honest, Duanmu Qianshan had no idea in his heart whether he would win or lose this battle. Chu Xiu's side was a battlefield, and his side was also a battlefield. But the final victory or defeat still depended on whether Chu Xiu could hold on. If he could not hold on, even if they attacked the Pure Yang Palace, it would be useless. But now that Duanmu Qianshan had made a choice, there was no turning back. He took a deep breath and spat out a word. Kill. With a command, a group of assassins from the Blue Dragon Society killed in the direction of the Pure Yang Palace without saying a word. They were silent, but their eyes were filled with excitement and murderous intent. These people were the elites of the Blue Dragon Society. Each of them was like a killing god. Usually, ordinary tasks could not arouse their interest. This time, attacking the Chunyang Dao sect if it was someone else, would definitely think that this was an extremely crazy thing. But for the assassins from the Blue Dragon Society, it was a challenge that excited them. At the same time, in the southern land, in front of the Subhuti Monastery, Ren Qianqiu led tens of thousands of phaseless demon sect disciples, 2 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses who had a good relationship with Wei Shuya, and some rogue demonic cultivators who had a good relationship with Wei Shuya. They directly besieged the Subhuti Monastery. This could be said to be the boldest thing that the Yinma clan had done in recent years. Last time, Wei Shuya asked Yi Xiaonan to retaliate against Subhuti Monastery in a fit of rage. In fact, he only attacked some small southern tribes that worshipped Subhuti Monastery. He didn't directly besiege Subhuti Monastery. Looking at the Shining Temple, Ren Qianqiu suddenly sighed and said, "In the past, when our holy religion was at its peak, the monks of the Subhuti Monastery had to bow their heads when entering and exiting the southern land. Now, it has been less than 500 years, and we don't even have the courage to face the Subhuti Monastery." After sighing, Ren Qianqiu suddenly said to Mr. Lu next to him, "Lu Jin, do you think Chu Xiu can really lead our Yinma clan to regain the glory of the holy religion?" After Lu Jin stepped into the real pellet state, with his excellent means and strength, he had now become the mainstay of the phaseless demon sect. Hearing Ren Qianqiu's words, Lu Jin shook his head and said, "I don't know, probably no one can say for sure. However, Sect Master, countless outstanding talents have appeared in the hidden devil faction over the past 500 years. However, to be able to reach Chu Xiu's level and rise so quickly, there has never been anyone like him. Other sects have a choice, but we have no choice. Supporting Chu Xiu is our only choice." Ren Qianqiu nodded and said, "Yeah, since there is no choice, then don't hesitate to make a move. I want to see how strong the Subhuti Monastery has become over the years." As soon as he said that, tens of thousands of elites of the phaseless demon sect and the Yinma clan had already rushed toward the Subhuti Monastery. At this time, other than the old monks who were in closed-door cultivation, there was only Xiao Mok, who had just been blinded, and a few young disciples who did not have the qualifications to finish their apprenticeship. Of course, according to Subhuti Monastery's standards, they were young. But in other sects, given their age, they would probably be the mainstay of the sect. But because of the particularity of the Subhuti Monastery, they were far from being able to roam the world. Sensing the demonic martial artists rushing up from the Subhuti Monastery below, Xiao Mok sighed. The Subhuti Monastery used righteousness to break evil, and joined forces with the world to attack head-on, not giving Chu Xiu a chance to breathe. But who knew that Chu Xiu's courage was bigger than they thought? He did not have much strength in his hands, but now he actually dared to split a part of his strength to attack the Subhuti Monastery. This was not just courage, it was simply madness. Xiao Mok could guess that there should be a strong force threatening the Chunyang Dao sect on the Chunyang Dao sect side. Therefore, Chu Xiu was taking a gamble. He was betting on who would be the first to fall. He was betting on whether his side would be destroyed by the Taoist-Buddhist alliance first, or if the pure Yang Dao sect and the Subodhi monastery would fall first. Currently, he was the only one in the true fire spirit refinement realm who was seriously injured in the Subodhi monastery. The other old monks who were in closed-door cultivation had not shown themselves for decades, and Xiao Mok was not sure if they were dead or not. Moreover, things like the Subodhi monastery could not be disturbed. Only when they came out of seclusion would they be alive. If they were disturbed midway, it was possible that they would become dead. With just him and the young disciples in the temple, what could they use to block it? Xiao Mok sighed and said, "Send a message to the abbot. I hope they have successfully killed Chu Xiu." At this moment, the battle in the Blue Dragon Society's battlefield was extremely intense. Shang Tianliang was already on the verge of collapse. In fact, it was already a miracle that he could withstand Luo Mo's attacks for so long. He was even on the verge of risking his life. Of course, he was not risking his life for Chu Xiu, but for the people in Shang City who were still in Green Capital. Although Ling Yunzi had been suppressing Chu Xiu, he was still unable to completely take down Chu Xiu. Moreover, he also realized that something was missing here. There were a lot of people missing. Although Ling Yunzi had not stepped into the underworld for a long time, it did not mean that he really did not understand the news in the underworld. Chu Xiu was a member of the Yinma clan. Even if the Yinma clan was in a state of disunity, it was unlikely that the entire Yinma clan only had Wei Shuya and a few others who came to help. There was also the Blue Dragon Society. As the head of the four spirits, the Blue Dragon Society was definitely not weak. However, in the entire Blue Dragon Society headquarters, most of the warriors of the Blue Dragon Society were actually controlling the formation. What about the others in the Blue Dragon Society? What about Duanmu Qianshan? A guess rose in Ling Yunzi's heart, and he could not help but feel his heart immediately sink to the bottom of the valley. Chapter 895. Sometimes, things in this world are actually very interesting. The more you don't want something to happen, the more likely it will happen. Just as Chu Xiu's side was being suppressed to the extreme, the faces of the people from Chunyang Dao sect and Subodhi monastery suddenly changed. They hurriedly went forward and passed the news to Ling Yunzi and Rama. After hearing the news, Ling Yunzi's face suddenly changed while Rama frowned slightly. Then, a Buddhist seal fell and directly blasted Shang Tianliang away. Seeing the gazes of the two people, Chu Xiu already knew that his plan had succeeded. The phaseless demon sect and Duanmu Qianshan had already made their move. Chu Xiu laughed out loud. "Why don't the two of you tell me what the news is?" "All right, since you won't tell me, I'll tell you for you." The headquarters of Blue Dragon Society and the 36 Tiangang divisions have already made their move to besiege Chunyang Dao sect. I hope that the formation of Chunyang Dao sect is strong enough and can last long enough. At the same time, under the leadership of the phaseless demon sect, the Yinma clan has already gone to the southern land to attack Subodhi monastery. I heard that there are still many powerhouses in Subodhi monastery who are in closed-door cultivation. Abbot Rama, you'd better pray that those powerhouses in closed-door cultivation are still alive. Otherwise, your Subodhi monastery won't last long. As soon as this was said, the people present were in an uproar. As the saying goes, those who are closely involved can't see clearly. In fact, some people felt that something was wrong from the beginning. They even noticed that the power on Chu Xiu's side was somewhat different than Ling Yunzi's. However, they thought that this was the backup power that Chu Xiu deliberately kept, waiting for them to attack the interior of Blue Dragon Society before taking action. In the end, they only found out now that Chu Xiu actually divided such a small amount of power into three, and secretly attacked Subodhi monastery and Chunyang Dao sect. This was no longer just bold, it was simply gambling with their lives. Looking at Ling Yunzi and Luo Mo, Chu Xiu's face broke into a maniacal grin. "Abbot Luo Mo, sect leader Ling Yunzi, why aren't you saying anything?" Strength was a good thing, so if one was not strong enough, they would be beaten. If I were to fight you head-on, even if I were to use all my resources, I would still be no match for you. My chances of winning are slim. But if you want to kill me, Chu Xiu, it won't be as simple as splashing blood all over my body. Now, let's see who can last until the end. I've already given the order to the Blue Dragon Society and the Phaseless Demon sect. After breaking through the Chunyang Dao sect and the Subodhi monastery, they'll dig 3 feet into the ground and leave no one alive. You destroyed my future. So I destroyed your ancestral land. It's very fair, isn't it? Now, let's see if the two of you have confidence in your sex formations. Let's see if you'll destroy me first, or if my people will destroy your ancestral land first. When these words were spoken, Ling Yunzi's expression turned extremely ugly. Even though Luo Mo still had an indifferent look on his face, his eyebrows were tightly knitted together. It was obvious that he was extremely furious. This move of Chu Xiu was simply a desperate and vicious plan. However, the problem was that not only was Chu Xiu's life at stake, but the future of the Sabodi monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect was also at stake. What was the most important thing for a sect? It was very simple, it was inheritance. This inheritance didn't refer to the cultivation techniques recorded on paper or in the secret box, but to the people. If the cultivation techniques were destroyed, as long as the people were still alive, they could continue to be restored in the future. However, if a sect's younger generation disciples were all dead, even if they had cultivation techniques, where would they go to find so many suitable young disciples? Moreover, if even their ancestral grounds were destroyed, how would they have the face to see their ancestors? To kill Chu Xiu, they had to pay such a price. Was it worth it? This was something worth pondering over. Ling Yunzi took a deep breath and said in a low voice, Chu Xiu, do you know that the more you act like this, the more I want to kill you? Ruthless and vicious. It's definitely not a good thing for someone like you to appear in the devil path. You're already so difficult to deal with before you've grown to Yi Xiaonan's level. When you have Yi Xiaonan's strength, coupled with your ruthless methods, I'm afraid there will be no peace in Jianghu. Chu Xiu said indifferently, Sect leader Ling Yunzi, you're wrong. If it wasn't for the fact that I couldn't defeat you head-on, why would I use such an extreme method? If I had Yi Xiaonan's strength, I wouldn't have waited for you to attack me. Instead, I would have personally gone to Sabodi Zen Temple or Chunyang Dao sect to experience your martial arts. Ling Yunzi had said this to many people. It was normal to eliminate evil for Jianghu, but how many people were really willing to eliminate evil for Jianghu at all costs? In fact, in terms of threat, a supreme devil path powerhouse like Yi Xiaonan was undoubtedly 100 times more threatening than Chu Xiu. Although the old celestial master and Rama were defeated by him, if they really wanted to eliminate Yi Xiaonan at all costs, they might still have a chance if they fought with their lives on the line. But no matter who it was, they didn't fight with their lives on the line. Therefore it was obvious that people were selfish. Even if Ling Yunzi wasn't selfish, Chunyang Dao sect would be too. At this time, Shi Yunzi was no longer entangled with Lu Fengxian. When he heard this news, he immediately used a secret communication method to contact Chunyang Dao sect. After getting more detailed information, his expression suddenly changed, and he shouted at Ling Yunzi, Senior brother, stop fighting. The vast Sun Peak has been breached. Right now, everyone is defending the Pure Yang Palace, but the formation of the Pure Yang Palace won't last long. In fact, the people that Chu Xiu sent to the south were stronger. There were all the martial artists of Phaseless Demon Sect and Wei Shuya, who were on good terms with them. But at least Sabodi Zen Temple still had Xiao Mo, and the power of the formation was strong enough. But Chunyang Dao sect was really without a leader, and it was on the verge of destruction. Ling Yunzi let out a long breath and said, One move. Give me time for one more move. Before he made a move, Ling Yunzi actually didn't want to fight this battle, because there was no benefit to winning or losing. But if his Chunyang Dao sect retreated like this, not only would there be no benefits, but it would also be a waste of time and effort. He would lose so many people, and he would lose his reputation. As the sect leader, other people could easily give up, but once Ling Yunzi made a decision, it was not so easy to give up. As Ling Yunzi's voice fell, the pure Yonggang Qi bloomed around his body, but he didn't know when, but a black figure surrounded by an extremely gloomy and tyrannical aura walked out from behind him, holding a long sword in his hand. The shape was exactly the same as Ling Yunzi's pure Yang Dao sword, but it was condensed by evil Qi. Everyone present was suddenly stunned. What was going on? The sect leader of Chunyang Dao sect actually cultivated demonic arts? When Shi Yunzi saw this scene, he suddenly thought of something. His face suddenly changed and he murmured, Senior brother, you still haven't let go of that matter? In the entire Chunyang Dao sect, only Shi Yunzi knew why Ling Yunzi had been in closed-door cultivation ever since he became the sect leader. It was not only to balance the various forces in Chunyang Dao sect, but also because he had once suffered from qi deviation. It wasn't a problem with his cultivation, but an inner demon. Back then, Ling Yunzi destroyed a diabolism sect with his own strength, and he killed every single one of them. This incident became a much-told story among the righteous Dao sects. But in fact, only Ling Yunzi knew that he had killed the wrong person. Not everyone in the diabolism was evil, but most of the righteous Dao sects were hypocrites. How many of them were truly kind? There were too many causes and effects in this, and it was hard to explain. However, in that battle with Ling Yunzi, he killed those who should be killed, and those who should not be killed, he also killed them. Although that battle brought him great fame and glory, it also brought him a lingering inner demon that he couldn't get rid of. Therefore, after taking over the Chunyang Dao sect, he began a long period of closed-door cultivation. It was called cultivation, but in fact, he was suppressing the inner demon. At first, Shi Yunzi thought that after so many years, his senior brother should have completely crushed the inner demon, but he didn't expect that he still hadn't let go of that matter. However, this inner demon was completely suppressed by Ling Yunzi, and he could even use a part of its power. In all things in the world, if there was yang there would be yin. Pure yang was righteous, and pure yin was evil? Ling Yunzi couldn't figure this out. On the contrary, if he did, his faith in Chunyang Dao sect might collapse. The inner demon was born from his body, and its power was also his negative power. One righteous and one evil, one yin and one yang, but they formed the most basic great path in the world. Ling Yunzi and his inner demon attacked at the same time, and the two swords affected the power of the entire world, the purest power of yin and yang. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed. If someone was watching from afar, they could even see that the dark clouds in mid-air and the sky had condensed into the shape of a Tai Chi diagram. This sword attack shocked everyone. This was definitely the power of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. Even Rama didn't dare to underestimate such an attack. In that instant, Chu Xiu's body immediately shone with a crimson light. The blood-red light seemed to connect the sky and the earth, and the huge pillar of blood that erupted could even be seen from more than 10 miles away. Lu Jianghe, who was in the blood soul bead, was already numb. He was the one who created the blood demon transformation technique, but he hadn't used it even once. Instead, he let Chu Xiu use it here frequently. With the eternal demon pill, Chu Xiu could be considered to be extremely unscrupulous, and he used this kind of life-risking technique without thinking. Under the endless blood-red light and demonic aura, Chu Xiu's sword slashed down. The void stagnated, and the momentum of the sword seemed to penetrate the world. Many people had heard of the power of the red dust ethereal slash. After all, it was a sword technique passed down by Dugu Weiwei in the past. With one slash, Ling Yunzi's Taoist connotation shone brightly, and he unleashed his power to the extreme. Finally, he broke free from the shackles of the sword. However, Chu Xiu's sword did not stop at all. Following the gap between the power of yin and yang, it directly slashed at Ling Yunzi's inner demon body. Although the power of yin and yang was the great path of the world, and represented the ultimate balance, Ling Yunzi's body could not achieve true balance. His inner demon body was obviously weaker than his original body in terms of power. Under the ethereal slash, the inner demon body continued to collapse, but Chu Xiu's body also continued to explode under the attack of the pure yang sword aura. However, under the effect of the eternal demon pill, it rapidly healed. This was like a tug of war, and it was obvious who would be the first to give up. Chapter 896. The fact that Chu Xiu was able to fight Ling Yunzi to this extent had actually exceeded many people's expectations. There were too few people who watched the battle between Chu Xiu and Chong Yunzi after his rebirth. Although the news had been leaked, the few people present did not reveal the outcome of the battle in detail. Therefore, even though the people of the pugilistic world knew that Chu Xiu's abilities had improved greatly after his rebirth and that he had cultivated his body with true fire, they did not have a direct understanding of his realm. It was only then that they saw how powerful Chu Xiu was. If it was a life-and-death battle, even the top 10 on the leaderboard would have to consider if they would be killed by Chu Xiu. Under the ethereal slash, Ling Yunzi's mental demon incarnation shattered with a loud bang. Ling Yunzi spat a mouthful of blood immediately, and his face was extremely pale. Although the mental demon was a mental demon, it was Ling Yunzi's mental demon and it had used his power. Now that the mental demon incarnation had been shattered, it was equivalent to Ling Yunzi being heavily injured. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu was in a worse state than Ling Yunzi. Although he had the eternal demonic elixir, which allowed him to resist the pure yang sword chi's attack with his body, in reality, the blood demon change technique and the eternal demonic elixir had almost drained all his energy and chi and blood. The reason why Chu Xiao could still stand there and confront Ling Yunzi was because of his willpower. If he were to collapse now, all his previous acting would have been in vain. Ling Yunzi wiped the blood from the corner of his lips. His aura was extremely weak. However, for some reason, although his aura was weak, it faintly harmonized with heaven and earth. Looking at Chu Xiao, Ling Yunzi coughed and spat another mouthful of blood before saying, "Although you've severely injured me by killing my mental demon incarnation, you've also helped me. Who can really tell if it's right or wrong, karma? Chu Xiao, from today onwards, karma will be put aside for now. Whether it ends or there will be a battle in the end, it's all up to fate." With that, Ling Yunzi waved his hand and called the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect and the entire Dao sect lineage to leave. He was already heavily injured. Moreover, if he didn't leave now, the Chunyang Dao sect would really be breached by the Blue Dragon Society. That would be a huge problem. Everyone else present had different expressions on their faces. Some of the true fire spirit refinement realm cultivators could already tell that Ling Yunzi was about to make a breakthrough. In the past, Ling Yunzi was also an outstanding figure in the Chunyang Dao sect. The reason why he was unable to make any progress in the past few decades was because of his inner demon. In the end, Chu Xiao killed Ling Yunzi's inner demon in this battle, which indirectly helped Ling Yunzi. Although he was currently heavily injured, once he recovered from his injuries, he reckoned that stepping into the heaven and earth profound opening realm would be a matter of course. Therefore, in this battle, although the Chunyang Dao sect couldn't kill Chu Xiao to avenge Chong Yunzi, it indirectly helped Ling Yunzi to make a breakthrough. Nobody could tell whether this was a loss or an advantage. Of course, to Chu Xiao, even if he knew the final outcome would be like this, there was nothing he could do. Ling Yunzi's strength was too strong. He had already reached the half-step heaven and earth profound opening realm. If Chu Xiao attacked his body, he might not be able to seriously injure him. On the other hand, it was much easier to kill the incarnation of the inner demon that was connected to him. Moreover, once the incarnation of the inner demon was destroyed, Ling Yunzi would be the one injured. Therefore, even if Chu Xiao knew that doing this would help Ling Yunzi, he could only do it. Without the Dao sect's attack, the pressure on Chu Xiao's side was greatly reduced. Rama shook his head gently and spat out a word. Go! As Rama led the people from the Sabodhi monastery and the Buddhist sect to retreat, the people on Chu Xiao's side instantly heaved a sigh of relief. They were practically defending against an enemy that was several times their number. Even with the protection of the Blue Dragon Society's sect-protecting formation, the pressure was still somewhat unbearable. It could be said that if the Chunyang Dao sect hadn't retreated first and held on for a little longer, Chu Xiao's men would have collapsed. Seeing that the people from the Dao and Buddhist sects had retreated, everyone present was dumbfounded. Chu Xiao won? No, this wasn't considered a victory, but he had survived this calamity. The Sabodhi monastery and the Chunyang Dao sect had to retreat without achieving anything. This result was already shocking enough. On a small mountain in the distance, Feng Qishao chuckled at Dugali. "Patriarch, what did I say? I still won the bet this time." "Ha ha ha." Duguli said expressionlessly, "When we return to Sword King City, go into seclusion in the Sword Pavilion for half a year. Not only do you need to cultivate your sword Dao, but you also need to tame your character. You're going to take over as the sect master in the future. If you can't even hide your emotions, how will that look?" Feng Qishao stared at Duguli dumbfoundedly. "Patriarch, I think I won the bet just now, right?" Duguli looked at him and said plainly, "You won, but I didn't keep my word. Let me teach you another lesson. In this pugilistic world, either you're stronger than others or you're more shameless than others. You're not as strong as I, and you're not as shameless as I. Then scram back and cultivate in seclusion." When Feng Qishao heard this, he looked like he had eaten ** tea. Moreover, he had swallowed it back after vomiting. At this moment, Chu Xiao glanced at his subordinates. Almost all of them were injured, and the number of casualties was not small. These people were Chu Xiao's elites from the Suppression Martial Hall and Guanzhong torture room. With so many casualties, it was enough to make Chu Xiao's heart ache. Of course, this wasn't the time to feel heartache. Chu Xiao said in a deep voice, seal the mountain gate and informed Duanmu Qianshan and Mr. Ran of the phaseless demon sect to retreat immediately. Sabodhi Monastery and Chunyang Dao sect had already returned to defend. If they didn't leave now, it would be interesting if they met people from these two sects on the way and got wiped out. After ordering everything in an orderly manner, Chu Xiu immediately brought his men back to the Blue Dragon Society. He began to seal the mountain gate and treat the injured. Mei Qinglian walked over with a face full of exhaustion. Just as she was about to say something to Chu Xiu fell into her arms. Mei Qinglian was shocked. She hugged Chu Xiu and shook him. She said loudly, "Hey, are you going to die again?" One couldn't blame Mei Qinglian for being nervous. Chu Xiu was a little too terrifying now. His aura was extremely weak. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't even be able to sense his vitality. Wei Shuya quickly walked over to take a look. He heaved a sigh of relief. It's okay. He just used up too much energy. If it was someone else like him, they would have been crippled. However, this kid has the eternal demon pill in his body. It can protect his true spirit. As long as he has enough time, he will recover. Hearing Wei Shuya's words, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Right now, Chu Xiu was their backbone. If something really happened to Chu Xiu, they really wouldn't know what to do. On the other hand, Chu Xiu had sealed off the Blue Dragon Society. However, the storm in the Jianghu hadn't passed yet. The Taoist and Buddhist sects had such a huge formation, but Chu Xiu had survived it. Moreover, he had done it in such a way. It did sound a little unbelievable. However, the others couldn't help but admire Chu Xiu. If it had been other forces, they probably wouldn't have done what Chu Xiu did. It was as if they had gambled with their lives. Although Chu Xiu won in the end, Chunyang Dao sect and Sabodhi Monastery suffered some damage. However, it wasn't serious. Most of the damage was on the formation. They came back in time. Chu Xiu also retreated in time. Apart from this, there was also a huge change on the wind cloud list. The biggest change was the change in the number 1 position on the wind cloud list. It changed from Ing Sanshu of the Ing clan to Ling Yunzi of Chunyang Dao sect. In the battle with Chu Xiu, Ling Yunzi's strength was undoubtedly revealed. He was definitely only half a step away from reaching the mysterious heaven and earth realm. After Chu Xiu destroyed his inner demon incarnation, it was only a matter of time before he broke through to the mysterious heaven and earth realm. It was only a matter of time before he broke through to the heaven and earth illumination realm. Hence, his title of number 1 on the leaderboard was well deserved. Moreover, he wouldn't be able to sit on this position for long. After all, he would have to stay on the sovereign leaderboard after breaking through to the heaven and earth illumination realm. The one who changed the most was Chu Xiu. He was placed 6th on the wind cloud list by Wind Sweeping Tower. In fact, no one could tell Chu Xiu's true combat strength. He had too many trump cards. No one knew where his limits were. In any case, most people thought that Ling Yunzi was stronger than Chu Xiu in the battle with Ling Yunzi. Chu Xiu risked his life and only managed to kill one of Ling Yunzi's inner demon incarnations. If the battle had continued, it was hard to tell who would be the winner. However, Ling Yunzi didn't have time at that time. If the battle had continued, Chunyang Dao sect would be in danger. However, what troubled Wind Sweeping Tower even more was how to deal with the mysterious heaven and earth realm existence that Chu Xiu found. Logically speaking, one would be qualified to be listed on the sovereign list once he entered the mysterious heaven and earth realm. However, it was only a qualification. It didn't mean that everyone in the mysterious heaven and earth realm was qualified to be a martial arts world supreme. After all, the prerequisite to becoming a martial arts world supreme was to have a force that could stand at the peak of the underworld. So what was Shang Tianliang? Was he a member of the Hidden Devil clan or a secluded expert? These were all mysteries. They didn't even know Shang Tianliang's name. In the entire underworld, the only people who knew Shang Tianliang's background were Lu Chonglu and the others. However, those who knew Shang Tianliang's background didn't say a word. Lu Chonglu didn't say a word because he didn't want to meddle in other people's business. If he did, it would only add to his troubles. Meanwhile, Granny Flower Ghost didn't say a word because she returned to the Rakshasa sect after leaving Green Capital. The conflict between the Central Plains warriors was too far away from her. As for why LV Zhanlu and Helian Chongfeng didn't say a word, it was because they had their own plans. To them, Since Chu Xiao could enter the green capital space again and even abduct a mysterious heaven and earth realm existence, they might be able to do it too. Therefore, during this period of time they had been researching in this area. They wanted to see if they could get a heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm fighter to be their bodyguard like Chu Xiao. Of course, if they really managed to bring another mysterious heaven and earth realm powerhouse out of green capital, they might be the first ones to regret it. After all, not everyone in green capital was as special as Shang Tianliang and had something to worry about. Chapter 897. At this time, Chu Xiao had no idea what was going on in the outside world because he was dreaming. That dream was very strange. He actually dreamed of all kinds of memories from his previous life on Earth. It was very real, but in the end, he dreamed of two people. One of them was Dugu Weiwa, who had once appeared in his illusion. Dugu Weiwa was in the middle of a boundless sea of blood, and he was like a demonic god. His entire body was enveloped by extreme negative emotions, and it was as if he was the master of this Yellow Springs blood sea. Countless evil spirits wailed beneath his feet. But at the same time, he saw another scene. Dugu Weiwa was actually tied up in a huge palace. Dragon-shaped chains were wrapped around his forelimbs, waist, and abdomen. The chains were tightly constricting, as if they were afraid that he would escape. At the same time, there were all kinds of forces in the palace blasting his body. Ice, wind, thunder, fire, yin, and yang were simply endless. But at this time, Dugu Weiwei was laughing wildly. It was a kind of laughter that contained arrogance, mockery, and other emotions. It was incomparably heroic. Although he had the same face as Dugu Weiwei in the Sea of Blood, his temperament was completely different, as if they were two different people. Just as Chu Xiao was about to get closer to see what the palace that imprisoned him looked like, he suddenly woke up. "Young Master Chu, you're finally awake." Mu Zi was guarding Chu Xiao, and seeing that Chu Xiao had woken up, her eyes immediately showed a look of surprise. Rubbing his head, Chu Xiao took a cup of water from Mu Zi and drank it in one gulp, then coughed and said, "How long has it been now? Has there been any unusual movements in the pugilistic world?" Mu Zi said, "It has been 10 days, but there have been no unusual movements. After the battle with the Blue Dragon Society, Chunyang Dao sect and Sabodi Monastery did not come out of it without losses. After returning to their sects, they did not take any action again. In fact, Chunyang Dao sect has already begun to seal their mountains, and they are not accepting visitors." Chu Xiao nodded. It was more or less what he had expected. As long as he survived this time, the Taoist and Buddhist sects should not continue to take action. However, at this time, although Chu Xiao had woken up, his body was currently overdrawn. It had to be said that the blood demon transformation technique that Lu Jianghe developed was indeed powerful, but the consumption was also abnormally shocking. Only Chu Xiao, who had cultivated the undying demon pill, would dare to play such a game. If it were Lu Jianghe, he would probably be ready to reconstruct his body after using this technique. Therefore, now that Chu Xiao had woken up, he still had to use some time to recuperate from his injuries. Seeing that Chu Xiao was about to go into seclusion, Mu Zi left obediently. The others were still waiting for Chu Xiao's news. However, after Mu Zi left, Chu Xiao focused his mind on the blood soul bead and asked Lu Jianghe, who was in a daze, "What kind of person is Dugu Weiwei? Don't say those words of praise. I'm asking you about his true character." The scene in the dream had left a very deep impression on Chu Xiao. In fact, Chu Xiao could even be sure that it was not a dream, but an image that he had seen through some mysterious connection. Because of this, Chu Xiao was puzzled. There were two Dugu Weiwei. One was in the Yellow Springs of the Blood Sea, while the other was imprisoned in a palace, suffering from the torture of the power of heaven and earth. Although they were the same person, the aura they emitted was completely different. Moreover, the bigger question was, who could imprison an existence like Dugu Weiwei? Among the people around Chu Xiao, the only one who had seen Dugu Weiwei was Lu Jianghe. Therefore, Chu Xiao could only ask him questions. Lu Jianghe was in a daze at the moment. When Chu Xiao spoke, he almost shivered in fear. Chu Xiao did not know if it was because Lu Jianghe had been cooped up in the blood soul bead for 500 years, but Lu Jianghe was very talkative at times, which annoyed Chu Xiao a lot. Therefore, Chu Xiao would sometimes use his mental strength to block the blood soul bead. During this time, Lu Jianghe was in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking, but he would sneer, laugh wildly, or even laugh foolishly from time to time. Glaring at Chu Xiao, Lu Jiang he said angrily, "Didn't you ask this question?" Of course, the sect leader has the character of the sect leader. Domineering, decisive, and unparalleled in wit. What else can he be? Chu Xiao said, "That's not what I'm asking you about. I'm asking about his character when it comes to dealing with people, such as whether he's vicious or vicious, petty or magnanimous, bold or gloomy." Lu Jiang he thought for a while and said, "It's hard to say. How can the sect leader's character be so easy to guess? In the eyes of most of the saints' warriors, the sect leader is almost perfect. Whether or not the cult leader was truly vicious and vicious, no one could say for sure. After all, there were quite a number of people in the Kunlun demon sect who were saved by the cult leader. For example, Heartless Demon Lord. But outside, when it comes to destroying a family, the sect leader is your ancestor. Those who follow him will prosper, and those who oppose him will perish. That is not just for show. If you say one wrong thing, your whole family will be killed. It is not like the sect leader has never done something like that before. As for whether or not he is stingy, I think he is. Otherwise, I would not have been imprisoned here." Chu Xiao looked at Lu Jiang and did not say anything. He did not seem to have realized what he had done wrong. Dugu Weiwei had not killed him, and that was already very generous. Lu Jiang he continued, "As for whether the sect leader is heroic or not, it depends on the person. For example, the sect leader admired sword sage Gu Qingqing very much. Even when Gu Qingqing died, she said, 'It's a pity' 3 times. It was the same when he faced Ning Xuanji's challenge. Although Ning Xuanji the old Taoist did have some skills, the real martial cult was not strong at that time. As long as the sect leader said the word, the Kunlun devil cult could easily destroy the real martial cult, which would affect Ning Xuanji's performance. However, the sect leader did not do that. He even ordered us not to cause trouble for the real martial cult. But sometimes, cult master is also very narrow-minded. If someone came to find trouble with cult master while shouting the slogan of exterminating the evil and defending the Tao, cult master would cripple their martial arts and strip them naked before displaying them in front of the Kunlun devil sect's entrance." Glancing at Chu Xiao, Lu Jiang said, "That's why there won't be an answer to this question of yours. At the sect leader's level, he naturally does whatever he wants. His personality is completely determined by his mood. However, compared to the sect leader, you still have an advantage. You're even more shameless than the sect leader." You don't have to say the last sentence. It's unnecessary. After saying that, Chu Xiao's mind left the blood soul orb. The Dugu Weiwei that Lu Jiang he saw was Dugu Weiwei. The Dugu Weiwei that he saw in his dream could also be Dugu Weiwei. He was afraid that he would not be able to get an answer for the time being. In the eyes of others, a person could have 1,000 different faces. Different people from different positions could see different personalities. Chu Xiao simply did not think about these messy things for now. Instead, he would first recover from his injuries before talking about anything else. With the indestructible magic pill, Chu Xiao's injuries recovered extremely quickly. In just half a month's time, he had almost recovered to his peak. After coming out of seclusion, a group of people were waiting for Chu Xiao. Although the battle with the Blue Dragon Society had passed, the aftermath was still there. As for how to deal with it, it still needed Chu Xiao to decide. Seeing that Chu Xiao had come out of seclusion, Wei Shuya was the first to smile and say, "Brat Chu Xiao, it's good that you're fine. You don't have to worry about this old man here. If you win this battle, then everything will be easy to talk about with Enmo." The internal problems of the Enmo clan were actually the easiest to solve. Previously, Situ Chi and the others all looked as if Chu Xiao would implicate the entire Enmo clan, and even dared to run over to Chu Xiao's side to complain. But now that Chu Xiao's achievements had come out, everyone immediately fell silent. Especially Shang Tianliang. This was a deterrent on the level of a nuclear bomb. This was because they couldn't figure out whether Shang Tianliang was a member of the Enmo clan or an expert that Chu Xiao had invited from somewhere. If it was the former, then it would be fine. Everyone belonged to the Enmo clan, so they still had to follow the rules. However, if it was the latter, but the other party was only Chu Xiao's people, then it would be troublesome. Other than Wei Shuya, the others weren't too troublesome. Previously, some people coveted the Guanzhong torture room, But after Chu Xiu's achievements came out, those people were so scared that they didn't dare to do anything. Some people were even so scared that they directly fled. The Blue Dragon Society suffered some losses because of the attack on the Chunyang Dao sect, but it wasn't serious. On the contrary, the Blue Dragon Society's reputation greatly increased because of this. In the past, when the Blue Dragon Society was in Butiannon's hands, it actually only had some deterrent power to some small forces in the underworld. As for the real big sects, it wasn't too strong a deterrent. After all, the Blue Dragon Society didn't have too strong of a record, and Butiannon's reputation had even faintly suppressed the Blue Dragon Societies. Now that the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters and the 36 Big Dipper Division's killers came together and actually dared to attack the Chunyang Dao sect, that power was simply shocking. At the same time, it also let the entire underworld see the true strength of the Blue Dragon Society. This battle could be considered as making a name for themselves. As for the Zhenwu Hall, Chu Xiu should find a chance to return to the Zhenwu Hall. The trouble of the Zhenwu Hall didn't lie with others, but with the Northern Yan Imperial Court and that Lord Xianglong. It was estimated that the other party had wanted to get rid of the Zhenwu Hall for a long time. Taking advantage of the news of Chu Xiu's death, they could completely get rid of the Zhenwu Hall. At this time, Shang Tianliang also came over and said with a serious expression, "Chu Xiu, it's time to fulfill your promise and bring some people out of the mall." Previously, Chu Xiu had said that as long as Shang Tianliang helped him block this time, Chu Xiu would once again go to the green capital space and bring some people out of the mall. During this time, Shang Tianliang had been watching this matter, but Chu Xiu hadn't woken up yet, so he couldn't urge him. Now that Chu Xiu had finally woken up, it was time to fulfill his promise. This kind of thing was a small matter for Chu Xiu, and it wasn't a big deal to only bring some people out of the mall. Therefore, Chu Xiu first went back to the mall with Shang Tianliang and brought out 1/10 of the mall's residents. These 10% of people were not Shang Tianliang's trusted aides, nor were they experts. On the contrary, they were the old, the weak, the women, the children, and the weak. People like them were the most dangerous in Emerald City, so the first people Shang Tianliang brought out were them. Chapter 898. Chu Xiu had arranged for the residents of Merchant City to stay in Northern Yan. Although there was the Blue Dragon Society in Eastern Qi, there were too many large forces in the Jianghu. It was not safe there. As for the Northern Yan, the only force that could cause trouble for Chu Xiu was the Great Light Temple. Of course, Chu Xiu also had his own dark thoughts. As long as he controlled the people in Merchant City, then Shang Tianliang could only be used by him. So, of course, he had to arrange these people in places that he had the most confidence in. After everything was arranged, Chu Xiu began to bring Mei Qinglian and the others back to the Northern Yan Martial Suppression Hall. Returning to Northern Yan, when he arrived at Yanjing City, Chu Xiu found that the security in Yanjing City seemed to be stricter than before. Even the number of soldiers patrolling the streets had increased. Mei Qinglian said, "Before you revealed your identity, the Northern Yan Emperor was already having some problems. His old illness relapsed and he summoned countless famous doctors in the Jianghu. Feng Buping from the Martial Suppression Hall and a few alchemy masters from the Vermilion Bird Pavilion also went, but there was nothing they could do. His Majesty is probably reaching the end of his lifespan. You know, no one is not afraid of death, especially those in high positions. Therefore, it is normal for the situation to be tense." Chu Xiu was surprised. Is it that bad? Although the Northern Yan Kingdom is not as rich as the Eastern Qi Kingdom, they should have accumulated a lot. Are there no 9 revolution pills among them? Mei Qinglian only spat out 4 words. Too weak to be nourished. Hearing Mei Qinglian's words, Chu Xiu immediately understood. It was not that the Northern Yan Kingdom did not have 9 revolution pills that could extend one's lifespan. In fact, there were quite a few of them. However, the problem was that Xianglong could not take them. Any pill that could extend one's lifespan was at least 6 revolution pills. To a cultivator this was nothing. However, to an old ordinary person like Xianglong, the medicinal power was too strong. He was unable to withstand it at all. After eating it, he would die even faster. In fact, sometimes things in this world were very fair. The difficulty of managing a country was definitely more difficult than managing a sect. Since he had chosen to be the emperor, he naturally had to give up on martial arts and give up on his own strength. In the past, when many countries were at war, The royal families of many small countries also practiced martial arts. This was because their countries were too small. It was only the size of a prefecture. How hard could it be to manage? But when it came to the size of a large country like Eastern Qi and Northern Yan, if the emperor of a country ignored the politics of the court and focused on martial arts instead, he would be a fatuous ruler. If he wanted to practice martial arts, that was fine. But he had to abdicate his position and go to the imperial consecration hall to practice. Then, he could replace him with someone who could focus on managing the state affairs. LV Fengxian said from the side, His Majesty's desire for victory is too strong, and his ambition is too great. If he is still in the prime of his life, it will not be a good thing for the three great countries. This time, when he returned to Northern Yan, Lu Fengxian also came back. Originally, Lu Fengxian was in charge of the Guanzhong torture room. But now that the crisis in Guanzhong torture room had been resolved, Lu Fengxian was unwilling to stay there. First, Lu Fengxian had nothing to do with Guanzhong torture room. Second, he was not good at handling complicated affairs. Even if Chu Xiu handed Guanzhong torture room to him, Lu Fengxian would still decline. Hearing that, Chu Xiu said indifferently, Today's heroes, the hegemony of the emperor, these are all built with human lives. In fact, even Xianglong is a mediocre person. Unless the world is unified and the Jianghu is restrained, there will be chaos everywhere. With that, Chu Xiu's lips curled into an unreadable smile. He said, Let's go. Let's go see that emperor first. After cultivating the true fire, Chu Xiu's strength had improved greatly. In the third war between the righteous and the demonic, Chu Xiu had single-handedly fought against the combined forces of Sabodhi Monastery and Chunyang Dao sect. This power was already shocking enough. Now that Chu Xiu faced Xianglong again, he no longer needed to be as careful and calculative as before. Xianglong was worried that he would not be able to shake off Chu Xiu. This time, Chu Xiu had come to tell Xianglong that his worry had come true. Outside the palace, Xianglong's personal eunuch, Eunuch Han, was waiting to welcome Chu Xiu. Once they met, Eunuch Han's cold face squeezed out a smile. He said, Official Chu has fought against both Taoism and Buddhism. Your name has shaken the Jianghu. I congratulate Official Chu. Chu Xiu smiled faintly. It's not a good job to exchange one's head for one's reputation. If Eunuch Han is interested, I can bring you along next time. The smile on Eunuch Han's face froze. He said, Official Chu must be joking. A eunuch like me can't do such a big thing. His Majesty is still waiting for Official Chu inside. Official Chu, please come in. Chu Xiu nodded and led Mei Qinglian and the rest into the palace. It had been more than a year since he last saw Xianglong. At this moment, Xianglong's face was haggard and he looked much older than before. Most importantly, Chu Xiu could sense an aura of lethargy coming from Xianglong's body. It was a strong aura of lethargy. Clearly, this emperor would not be able to hold on much longer. At this moment, there were other people in the palace. There was General Kuang Tu, Beigong Bailey of the Eastern Mountain Army of the 5 Northern Yan armies, General Ren Qianli of the Northern Guard Army, and Taoist Wu Yang. The way these people looked at Chu Xiu was different. Beigong Bailey was indifferent. At his level of strength and status, he would not easily make enemies with others. Previously, when he took over the martial suppression hall, although he had interacted with Chu Xiu, there was no enmity between them. However, Ren Qianli looked at Chu Xiu with a strong sense of fear and dread. The hatred of killing one's father was absolutely irreconcilable. It was almost the same for killing one's master. However, Ren Qianli could be said to be timid or slippery. When he first learned of Feng Jinwu's death, Ren Qianli's first choice was not to take revenge but to hide far away. He was afraid that Chu Xiu would eliminate him. However, his worry was unnecessary. At that time, Chu Xiu could not be bothered with him. Moreover, Chu Xiu had not fallen out with Xianglong yet. It was unwise to rashly touch a general of the imperial court. However, Ren Qianli's bad side was that when he heard of Chu Xiu's death, he actually thought that Chu Xiu was dead. Therefore, under his active bewitchment, or rather, under Xianglong's incitement, Ren Qianli actually had the idea of annexing the martial suppression hall. Although he did not succeed in the end, he still successfully offended Chu Xiu. When he first heard that Chu Xiu was not dead, Ren Qianli was really shocked. If Xianglong had not summoned Chu Xiu to the palace, Ren Qianli would not even have the courage to face Chu Xiu. As for Taoist Wu Yong, he was fearless and even heaved a sigh of relief. He was somewhat proud. When he first heard that Chu Xiu was dead, it was not that Taoist Wu Yong did not have the idea of taking over the martial suppression hall. However, he gave up in the end. Firstly, it was because Taoist Wu Yong's Yinshan sect was previously a vassal of the Kunlun devil cult. He knew what kind of morals that group of evil cultivators were. Although Chu Xiu was dead, Wei Shuya was still alive. Part of the reason why he did not take over the martial suppression hall was because he was wary of Wei Shuya. Another reason was that Taoist Wu Yong had seen clearly what kind of character Xianglong was. Before Chu Xiu became powerful, he had roped in Chu Xiu and established the martial suppression hall to suppress the Northern Yan martial arts community. After the martial suppression hall became powerful, he began to suppress the martial suppression hall. Although Xianglong seemed to trust him now and put him in an important position, once he, Taoist Wu Yong, grew to the point where he was on the same level as Chu Xiu, he would be the one being suppressed. Therefore, not only did Taoist Wu Yong not take action against the martial suppression hall, but he also secretly passed the news to them. Now, it seemed that he had taken the right step. Chu Xiu, I have heard about your matter. When I first heard that you had met with an accident, I was very distressed, Xianglong said with a smile on his face. Chu Xiu casually bowed to Xianglong and said, So your Majesty is prepared to hand over the martial suppression hall that I built with my own hands to someone else? Xianglong's face suddenly stiffened. At the same time, his eyes also showed a touch of anger. Knowing that Chu Xiu was not dead and had even withstood the joint siege of Taoism and Buddhism, Xianglong was originally prepared to give Chu Xiu a way out. After all, it was not good for either side to shed all pretense of cordiality. However, who would have thought that Chu Xiu did not know how to appreciate favors and said all of this in front of everyone? Xianglong suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a smile on his face, It is just a misunderstanding. The Martial Suppression Hall is now an important department of the Northern Yan to supervise and control the Northern Yan martial arts community. When you are not here, I am also worried that the Martial Suppression Hall will be a group of dragons without a leader, so I thought of this method. Now that you, Chu Xiu, are back, the position of the Martial Suppression Hall Commandant is still yours. No one can take it away from you. I can even guarantee that as long as I am here, no one will dare to touch your position as the Martial Suppression Hall Commandant. Chu Xiu sneered in his heart, but on the surface, he bowed to Xianglong and said, In that case, thank you, Your Majesty. At this moment Chu Xiu suddenly said, By the way, Your Majesty, I have one more thing to report. What is it? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, I have reported that the Northern Guard Army's General Ren Qianli has colluded with foreign countries, colluded with Eastern Qi, and betrayed the intelligence and interests of the Northern Yan. He should be executed for his crime. Upon hearing this, Ren Qianli suddenly trembled and quickly stood up and shouted, Chu Xiu, you are slandering me. When did I collude with Eastern Qi and betray the Northern Yan? In front of Your Majesty, everything must be based on evidence. Although he knew that Chu Xiu would not let him off so easily, he did not expect Chu Xiu to distort the truth in front of everyone and smear his name. Ren Qianli was originally a Northern Yan man. After he finished his apprenticeship, he also served in the Northern Yan Imperial Court until now. For so many years, his foundation and interests were all in the Northern Yan. He would only collude with Eastern Qi if he had nothing better to do. Chu Xiu said lightly, Evidence? I am the evidence. With my reputation in the pugilistic world, do you think that I, Chu Xiu, would frame you? Your Majesty, I have found a traitor for you. Do you believe me or him? Chapter 899. Many people had seen false accusations before, but Chu Xiu's blatant attempt to frame someone was a challenge to everyone's intelligence. The smile on Xianglong's face gradually disappeared. Chu Xiu, are you joking with me? Ren Qianli has been with me for so many years. I don't believe that he would betray the Northern Yan. Given Xianglong's suspicious nature, how could he treat Ren Qianli as his trusted aide if he wasn't confident? He couldn't find any reason for Ren Qianli to betray him, let alone colluding with Eastern Qi. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Does that mean that Your Majesty doesn't believe in my trustworthiness? The mouths of everyone present, including Mei Qinglian and the others, twitched. Chu Xiu didn't seem to have any trustworthiness in the pugilistic world. At least, his trustworthiness wasn't worth much. Xianglong snorted. Chu Xiao, don't cause trouble here. I know about the grudge between you and Ran Qianli, but I've already explained that it's all a misunderstanding. What more do you want? Chu Xiao shook his head. Honest words are unpleasant to the ear. It seems that your majesty still doesn't believe me. Forget it, it's the duty of an official to share the emperor's burdens. Since that's the case, I'll settle it myself. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiao's body burned with inner fire. He took a step forward, causing the entire hall to shake. He was actually attacking Ran Qianli. No one present had expected that Chu Xiao would actually dare to make a move in front of Xianglong. He was simply audacious to the extreme. How dare you? Beigong Bailey's face darkened. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Chu Xiao. His fist landed like a spear, and the surrounding space even distorted slightly, producing a shocking explosion. Beigong Bailey had no grudge against Chu Xiao, but this was the Northern Yan Imperial Palace. Chu Xiao had made a move right in front of him, so he had no choice but to intervene. Chu Xiao also punched out, displaying the mountain and sea fist scripture of the Black Tortoise True technique. Their fists met, and in an instant, an extreme power erupted. From the first exchange, Chu Xiao knew that Beigong Bailey, the top expert of the Northern Yan military, deserved his reputation. The other party was a martial artist who came from the military. His body had been tempered to an extremely shocking degree. Even though Chu Xiao had cultivated his true fire-tempering body, he still could not gain an advantage over the other party in terms of physical strength. But right now, Chu Xiao had no intention of fighting Beigong Bailey to the death. He was only attacking to kill. Just as Chu Xiao's various Black Tortoise True techniques erupted from his hands, a dozen blood shadows flew out from behind him. This scene immediately gave Eunuch Han a fright. Protect the Emperor! Eunuch Han shouted in a shrill voice. The sinister energy around his body drifted away as he stood in front of Xianglong. Chu Xiao was not crazy enough to want to kill Xianglong in the Northern Yan Imperial Palace. The blood shadows only went straight for Xianglong. Taoist Wu Wang only stopped one blood shadow symbolically, but more blood shadows charged straight for Ran Qianli. Ran Qianli's face instantly turned deathly pale when he felt the immense power of the blood shadows behind him and the piercing power of the evil blood. Originally, he thought that Chu Xiao would not dare to act presumptuously in the imperial palace. Who would have thought that Chu Xiao would be so audacious? He actually dared to attack him in the imperial palace, right in front of Xianglong. In this life-or-death crisis, Ran Qianli formed a seal with his hands. In an instant, an extremely cold blood energy exploded from his body. This was not a cultivation method passed down in Feng Jinwu's lineage. Instead, it was a secret art of the devil path that he had obtained by chance. It did not require him to burn his blood essence, but to purify the cold energy in his own qi and blood. At the same time, Ran Qianli's seal emitted a wisp of Buddhist light. That was his lineage's Gang energy secret technique that was close to Buddhism. The cold blood energy combined with the scorching Buddhist light. When the seal landed, Ran Qianli almost exploded with all his strength. As long as he could block this attack and hold on until the experts from the Northern Yan Imperial Consecration Hall arrived, he would be saved. Ran Qianli could not help but heave a sigh of relief when he saw the blood shadows in front of him explode one after another. However, the next moment, this sigh of relief turned into a spurt of blood. He did not know when, but a blood shadow holding a sword had already appeared behind him. The demonic blood sword pierced through his entire body, and a large amount of blood spurted out of Ran Qianli's mouth. With a soft sound, the blood shadow drifted away, and Ran Qianli's body also fell to the ground. At this moment, a powerful aura came from the palace. There were real pellet state and real fire spirit refinement state. Impressively, the experts from the Imperial Consecration Hall had arrived, but they were a little too late. Ran Qianli was dead, and Beigong Bailey retreated with a black face. With him intercepting Ran Qianli, Chu Xiao still managed to kill him. This was undoubtedly a very embarrassing thing. However, Beigong Bailey was also helpless. He was a martial artist from the military, and his martial arts were bold and powerful. If it was in the outside world, he would not be afraid of Chu Xiao. However, in such a narrow place, he still had to be wary of Xianglong, so he could not exert his full strength. Moreover, in the face of all kinds of strange martial arts from Chu Xiao, he was also very helpless. Looking at Ran Qianli's corpse below, Xianglong was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pushed Eunuch Han, who was in front of him, away, pointed at Chu Xiao and said angrily, "Chu Xiao! How dare you kill someone in front of me? How dare you?" Chu Xiao cupped his fists and bowed. "Please forgive me, Your Majesty. I know that Your Majesty cannot bear to take action because of your old friendship, so I will do it on Your Majesty's behalf. Only by killing such a shameless person who colludes with a foreign country will it be satisfying. I hope Your Majesty will not blame me for my rudeness. Now that the world is in turmoil, I have just experienced a disaster, and the Great Light Temple has not suffered any losses at all. At this critical moment, a despicable person like Ren Qianli, who dares to collude with a foreign enemy, must be killed as quickly as possible." Eunuch Han looked worriedly at Xianglong, who was trembling in anger. At this moment, Xianglong was looking at Chu Xiao with undisguised murderous intent. However, after a while, the murderous intent around Xianglong dissipated. He waved his hand in extreme exhaustion. "All right, you may leave." Hearing this, the auras belonging to the Imperial Hall of Consecrators left. Chu Xiao bowed to Xianglong and said, "Since this is the case, I will take my leave." With that, Chu Xiao led his men and left calmly. After Chu Xiao and the others, including Taoist Wuyang and Beigong Bailey, had left, Xianglong grabbed the teacup beside him and smashed it on the ground. Like an angry lion, he roared, "Bastard! How dare he threaten me? How dare he threaten me?" Who could not understand the meaning behind Chu Xiao's words? In any case, Xianglong understood it. It was not an explanation, but a threat and a warning. The Jianghu was turbulent. With the power that Chu Xiao had displayed, the Blue Dragon Society alone was enough to pose a threat to the Northern Yen. He said that he had gone through this calamity and succeeded against both Taoism and Buddhism. What he meant was that even if the Northern Yen attacked him with all their might, he might not lose. Similarly, when Chu Xiao mentioned the Great Light Temple, it was also a threat. The Zhenwu Hall was at least a part of the Northern Yen, while the Great Light Temple was purely a place outside of civilization. Even if the monks were to discipline them on the surface, they would not listen to the Northern Yen court. If Xianglong was younger and more aggressive, he might have fallen out with Chu Xiao on the spot. However, it was a pity that he was too old, and his confidence was lacking. The Zhenwu Hall had already become a part of the Northern Yen order. If he openly fell out with them, he would not be able to take down Chu Xiao. The Northern Yen Jianghu would definitely be in chaos, and it would also affect the court. Especially now that he did not know how long Xianglong could live. There was not much time left for him. The Northern Yen could not be in chaos. At this time, outside the Northern Yen Palace, Mei Qinglian stared at Chu Xiao without blinking. Chu Xiao had goosebumps. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Mei Qinglian said, "I found that you have reconstructed your body, and you are much bolder than before. You killed someone in front of Xianglong. Aren't you afraid that Xianglong will really fall out with you?" Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "I have always been this bold. The more powerful one is, the more bolder he is. This is normal. Weak but bold, that is called not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. Strong but timid, that is called indecisiveness, and you will not be able to achieve great things. So what if it is the Northern Yen court? Xianglong has scruples, but I do not. If he really dared to fall out with me, he would have done so when the news of my death came. Wouldn't it be easy to take over the Zhenwu Hall when I was not here? He did not do so, which means that he has concerns. He cannot bear the consequences of the Northern Yen chaos. Moreover, even if Xianglong really fell out with me, it is not like we can't fight our way out. As long as there is no mysterious heaven and earth realm, who can stop me?" Chu Xiao was not being arrogant. He had the strength and confidence to do so. In the spiritual refinement realm, except for the few who stood at the peak, Chu Xiao was confident that he could fight the rest of the people in Chu Xiao's spiritual refinement realm. Even if he could not win, he could escape. Therefore, as long as there was no spiritual refinement realm, Chu Xiao was not worried. As for Ren Qianli, he had to be killed. Even if he was not in the palace today, Chu Xiao would find a chance to kill him. It was not only revenge, but also a warning. At any time, force was always the most powerful means of warning. For example, Taoist Wuyang was like this. After being frightened by Chu Xiao, he did not dare to touch the Zhenwu Hall again even if he had Xianglong's instructions. After this incident, If Xianglong wanted to touch the Zhenwu Hall again, he would have to consider the consequences. After this incident, the court directly announced that Ran Qianli had died in the hands of an assassin of Eastern Qi and made Eastern Qi the scapegoat. Anyway, this was not the first time something like this had happened. Chu Xiu did not care about what the Northern Yan court said. There were still a lot of things in the Zhenwu Hall that he needed to deal with. While Chu Xiu was away, the Zhenwu Hall operated as usual, but some important things were temporarily put on hold. Now that Chu Xiu was back, these things naturally needed his decision. Moreover, Chu Xiu also needed to find a place to make arrangements for those people in the mall. Chapter 900. Chu Xiu stayed in the Zhenwu Hall for nearly a month. During this month, he had almost no time to cultivate. It was not until a month later that he had solved all the problems in all aspects and handled them properly. After Chu Xiu had dealt with these matters, he began to think about his own matters, the most important of which was his weapon. It had to be said that Chu Xiu was a little excited when he first obtained the Heavenly War Case. After all, in terms of subtlety, the Heavenly War Case could be said to be far superior to the Heavenly Demon Dance. As a result, when he used it, Chu Xiu found that the Heavenly War Case really had a fatal flaw, as Master Mo Yezi had said, which was its degree of firmness. A weapon, even if it had countless uses and all kinds of unexpected changes, was still a weapon. The degree of firmness was the most important. In particular, during the last battle with Ling Yunzi, Chu Xiu had a more direct understanding of this point. Ling Yunzi's bare-handed attack had directly smashed the Heavenly War Case. Fortunately, Master Mo Yezi's skills guaranteed that none of the mechanical parts were damaged and could be reused later. However, this situation was extremely dangerous. In a life-and-death battle, the slightest mistake could lead to a great loss. A little carelessness could lead to death. Therefore, after solving the matter with the Northern Yan, Chu Xiu was also ready to solve the problem with the Heavenly War Case. He could also solve a simple hatred, a very small one. Master Mo Yezi had said that if the Heavenly War Case wanted to reach its peak, it must be forged with the meteoric iron as the main material. As for the meteoric iron, so far, Master Mo Yezi knew that only the divine sword Flowing Light Evil Moon of the Hidden Sword Villa was made with this material. Therefore, Chu Xiu had long prepared to go to the Hidden Sword Villa. However, there were too many things that happened later, so Chu Xiu did not have the time to care about the Hidden Sword Villa. Speaking of which, the Hidden Sword Villa could only blame itself for being unlucky. In fact, the Hidden Sword Villa had never been on good terms with Chu Xiu. The Villa Master, Chang Tingshan, had already clashed with Chu Xiu several times. However, these were just small matters. Even when Chang Tingshan had led Kuang Shiyue to kill Chu Xiu had not taken it to heart. Sometimes, Chu Xiu could be considered very magnanimous. Of course, this was also related to the fact that Chu Xiu had too many enemies. He remembered the big grudges and could only put aside the small ones. It could be said that if not for the Flowing Light Evil Moon, Chu Xiu would not have bothered to find trouble with the Hidden Sword Villa. But now, there was another reason to attack the Hidden Sword Villa. Calling Mei Qinglian and the rest, Chu Xiu told Mei Qinglian and the rest about the matter. Mei Qinglian thought for a while and said, "Hidden Sword Villa? That's easy." This generation of the Hidden Sword Villa did not have any strong people, and Chang Tingshan was just a mediocre person. The only thing they needed to guard against was the sword formations of the Hidden Sword Villa. Over the years, the Hidden Sword Villa had collected countless famous swords. The other sword sects were famous for their swordsmen, but only the Hidden Sword Villa was famous for its swords. The sword formations formed by these famous swords were indeed difficult to deal with. If you want to attack the Hidden Sword Villa, you must attack before the sword formations are activated. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if the sword formations were alarmed. How about this? I will pick a few new faces from the subduing martial hall and let them disguise themselves as odd job workers or outer sect disciples, and find a way to enter the Hidden Sword Villa. Then, we will work together and find a way to attack the Hidden Sword Villa before the formation is activated. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. Just send an invitation to the Hidden Sword Villa and tell them to hand over the Flowing Light Evil Moon, and I will let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, if they don't hand it over, I will come and get it myself." Mei Qinglian was stunned. Pang Hu, who was at the side, also scratched his head. He suddenly felt that Chu Xiu was more like a bandit than he was. Is it that simple and crude? Mei Qinglian still could not accept such a method. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "It's that simple and crude. It's a problem that can be solved with absolute strength. Why do you have to make it so complicated? The Hidden Sword Villa is the weakest among the 5 major sword sections. Even if City Lord Shang does not make a move, we can solve it ourselves. If Cheng Tingshan gives it to us, it means that he knows his place, and we can save ourselves some effort." Mei Qinglian did not ask what would happen if Cheng Tingshan did not know his place. With Chu Xiu's way of doing things, it was obvious. However, this method still made Mei Qinglian a little uncomfortable. After all, there were not many people in the pugilistic world like Chu Xiu who would openly threaten others for things. But thinking about it carefully, it seemed to make sense. Therefore, Mei Qinglian followed Chu Xiu's instructions and sent someone to send an invitation to the Hidden Sword Villa. It was Chu Xiu's exact words, without changing a single word. His attitude could be said to be extremely arrogant. In Eastern Qi's Hidden Sword Villa, when Cheng Tingshan saw Chu Xiu's invitation, his first reaction was anger, and then fear. Back in the Illusory Realm 6, he had watched as Chu Xiu's body was smashed to pieces. At that time, Cheng Tingshan had secretly rejoiced. As a result, less than a year later, there was news that Chu Xiu had been resurrected, and his strength was even stronger than before. At that time, Cheng Tingshan was also terrified, thinking that Chu Xiu was coming to find trouble with him. As a result, who would have thought that Chu Xiu went on a killing spree in the pugilistic world and never came to find him at all? This also made Cheng Tingshan breathe a sigh of relief. But now seeing this post, Cheng Tingshan's mood was like riding a roller coaster, ups and downs. With this cycle, Cheng Tingshan felt that he would be scared to death by Chu Xiu even if he was not killed by him. With a sigh, Cheng Tingshan called a servant and said, "Go to the guarding sword pavilion and gather the elders for a discussion." To be precise, Cheng Tingshan was not the only martial Dao Grand Master of the real pellet state in the Hidden Sword Villa. There were also other older generation martial artists. However, these older generation martial artists had long been unable to make a move. It was not that they didn't want to, but they couldn't. The Hidden Sword Villa collected the world's famous swords, and there were many divine weapons among them. However, because the divine weapon had a sword spirit, and the sword spirit also had a mind, so if the sword spirit was damaged accidentally, it would inevitably cause the famous sword's grade to drop. Therefore, in every generation of the Hidden Sword Villa, someone would choose to enter the guarding sword pavilion and nurture the divine sword with their own blood and sweat. No matter what realm they reached, they were not allowed to go out and serve the sword for life. People in the pugilistic world said that the sword of the Hidden Sword Villa was more important than the person. This sentence was not just a mockery, but a fact. Of course, the divine weapon had a spirit. The Hidden Sword Villa had done this for thousands of years, and it was not without rewards. At least all the divine weapons collected by the Hidden Sword Villa could be used by the Hidden Sword Villa to help them set up the sword array. This was also a return of favor. Although Cheng Tingshan was the villa master, he still had to discuss this kind of thing with a group of elders. Moreover, these elders were the real trump card of the Hidden Sword Villa. Those famous swords and divine weapons were nurtured by them with their qi and blood, so they had the highest compatibility with them. Once the Hidden Sword Villa was in a crisis and needed to use this trump card, it still depended on these elders. In a living room of the guarding sword pavilion, Cheng Tingshan sat on the lower seat, and the 6 elders of the Hidden Sword Villa sat on the side. Their faces were generally pale, and their bodies were thin. It was obviously caused by not seeing the sun for many years and the loss of qi and blood. In fact, there were hundreds of martial artists who entered the guarding sword pavilion to serve the sword in each generation, but after a few decades, there were only 6 people left. Although the martial artists who entered the guarding sword pavilion to choose the sword were not short of various cultivation resources, and they were even given priority, the strength of the people who entered the guarding sword pavilion was originally uneven, and they were in a state of loss of qi and blood all year round. Their lifespan was extremely short, and those who didn't reach the real pellet state all died. Only the 6 of them persisted until now. Cheng Tingshan took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Elders, now our Hidden Sword Villa is in danger. You have all seen Chu Xiu's post. This flowing light evil moon, should we give it or not?" "Of course not." The 6 elders spoke almost at the same time. One of them gritted his teeth and said, Our hidden sword villa respects the sword, and we serve the sword for life. The sword is our life. If someone wants your life, will you give it to him? Cheng Tingshan smiled bitterly. But if we don't give it, I'm afraid Chu Xiao will really take our lives. Elders, you have been in the guarding sword pavilion for a long time, so you may not know the news of the outside world. Chu Xiao's fierce name has already spread throughout the martial world. Previously, Sabodhi Zen Monastery and Chunyang Dao sect teamed up to deal with him, but he was still able to withstand it. The most terrifying thing is that he has a heaven and earth mysterious state powerhouse on his side. The opponent's strength is probably enough to destroy our hidden sword villa. Although the 6 elders of the hidden sword villa stayed in the guarding sword pavilion all year round, so their thoughts and actions were a bit extreme, they were not idiots. If it was only the true fire spirit refinement state, then their hidden sword villa could still block it with their own sword array. But if it was the heaven and earth mysterious state, no matter how strong the sword was, it was no match for these martial world masters. After a long silence, an elder said, "Don't Sword King City, Wind Cloud Sword Tomb, and Forgetful Sword Hut all want our hidden sword villa sword array? We can't give them the sword, so they can find it themselves. But we can give them the sword array, so they can help us once." Although the 5 major sword sects are not on the same side, they will not ignore it. I heard that the Yu Palace was destroyed by Chu Xiao. If our hidden sword villa is also destroyed by Chu Xiao, it will not be good for the 5 major sword sects' face. Sword King City's human king sword can match the heaven and earth mysterious state. Who knows what trump cards are hidden in the Wind Cloud Sword Tomb? Who knows if that old monster from the Forgetful Sword Hut is dead or not? Although the 3 sects don't have the heaven and earth mysterious state on the surface, they are still qualified to fight him. When Cheng Tingshan heard this, he immediately said, "Since the elders are also doing this, then I will make the preparations." In fact, this was also a countermeasure in Cheng Tingshan's mind, but he did not say it out loud. Because in the beginning, he even wanted to admit defeat and hand over the flowing light evil moon. But that would inevitably cause the hidden sword villa disciples to be dissatisfied, thinking that he, the villa master, was not a hot-blooded person. Now that he had pulled the elders over, everyone made a decision together. Whether it was good or bad, at least he was not the only one responsible. Chapter 901. Hidden Sword Villa did not respond after receiving Chu Xiao's invitation. Chu Xiao could almost guess Hidden Sword Villa's attitude. Chu Xiao was not surprised by Hidden Sword Villa's attitude. Other people's attitude towards swords was just a weapon, but Hidden Sword Villa's attitude towards swords was extremely stubborn. They even thought that the swords in their hands were more important than people. For so many years, it had always been Hidden Sword Villa who used all means to collect the world's famous swords. When did Hidden Sword Villa take out a sword? Even if there was, it had to be Hidden Sword Villa who took the initiative to give it to their vassal force to rope in. For example, the Longevity Sword sect that had been destroyed by Chu Xiao in the past. Although the Longevity Sword sect was one of the new 7 sects, it was actually a vassal of the Hidden Sword Villa. Cheng Tingshan had given him a divine weapon, which was equivalent to him falling into his hands. Now that Chu Xiao was using a threatening attitude to ask for it, if Hidden Sword Villa gave it, would moon-worshipping sect give it to them in the future? This could not be opened. If it was opened, Hidden Sword Villa would never have a day of peace. The corner of Chu Xiao's mouth revealed a smile. Hidden Sword Villa was not completely cowardly. In that case, he wanted to see how strong they could be. As he spoke, Chu Xiao immediately found Mei Qinglian and the others. He prepared to bring a few elites from Martial Hall to Hidden Sword Villa. At the same time, Chu Xiao also brought Shang Tianliang along. Mei Qinglian was surprised. "Didn't you say that you could deal with Hidden Sword Villa by yourself? Why are you bringing Mr. Shang?" Chu Xiao said lightly, "I am not afraid of Hidden Sword Villa, but I am afraid that someone will meddle in other people's business." Meddle in other people's business? With your current power, who would dare to meddle in other people's business? We have to guard against the other 3 major sword sections. Don't forget the righteous and demonic battle on Floating Jade Mountain. Compared to the Taoist and Buddhist lineages that have conflicts with each other, the relationship between the 5 major sword sects is much closer. It's better to be prepared. Just as Chu Xiao was about to take action, the 3 major forces had already received the news from the Hidden Sword Villa. Inside Sword King City, Shen Tianwang, Duge Li, and Meng Yonghe were all there. Heavenly King Shen laughed coldly. Hidden Sword Mountain Villa is afraid now? Last time I wanted to borrow their evil annihilation sword to take a look. That old brat Cheng Tingshan was so stingy that he let me go as if I was a thief. Now that something has happened, he's asking my Sword King City for help. Meng Yonghe said in a deep voice. Then our Sword King City doesn't care about this matter? The last time I fought with Yi Xiaonan, the human king sword suffered a lot of damage. If I use it again, I'm afraid that irreparable damage will appear. Dugu Li said from the side. Even if we don't use the human king sword, our Sword King City has to take care of this matter. With the reputation of the 5 major sword sects here, no matter what Hidden Sword Villa does, that's up to us. We can't let Chu Xiu destroy the Yunnu Palace and then destroy Hidden Sword Villa. Otherwise, what will the people of the pugilistic world think of our 5 major sword sects? Previously, Chu Xiu had killed Lin Fengya and almost destroyed the Yunnu Palace, but the other 4 sects did not say anything. The reason was simple. The Yunnu Palace had courted death themselves. After all, the 5 major sword sects were not one sect. It was a bit exaggerated to say that they were united, but they were still an alliance. If Chu Xiu had destroyed the Yunnu Palace because of benefits, the other 4 sects would definitely intervene. However, the Yunnu Palace had schemed against Chu Xiu's best friend and sworn brother. They deserved to be destroyed. They couldn't even find an excuse to intervene. Moreover, the women of the Yunnu Palace were not very likable. Even within the 5 major sword sects, not many people liked them. This time, Chu Xiu had publicly threatened to demand the Hidden Sword Villa's divine weapon. They now had a reason to act. Most importantly, the Hidden Sword Villa was very sensible. They actually took the initiative to send the Hidden Sword Villa's sword formation blueprint to them. That's right, this time, the Hidden Sword Villa did not mention anything like helping them block this time, and they would give them the sword formation again. Instead, they sent the sword formation illustration along with the request for reinforcements. Their attitude was extremely humble, almost as if they were at their wits' end and hoped that the few of them would help them. This attitude made the others feel rather comfortable. Moreover, the Hidden Sword Villa's sword formation was indeed something that the other sword sects coveted. The Hidden Sword Villa's sword formation was different from other formations. It was set up with swords and controlled by people. Even if you didn't know the slightest bit about formations, as long as you were a swordsman, you could control the sword formation. The Hidden Sword Villa had spent thousands of years researching the sword formation. It could be said to be one of the Hidden Sword Villa's secret techniques. Moreover, the other sword sects could also use it. This was also extremely tempting. Heavenly King Shen said in a low voice, "It's okay to attack. The key is how to control the speed. You've seen Chu Xiu's power. Even if we don't count the Hidden Devil Clan behind him, his power is extremely shocking. If we don't control it well and lose ourselves for the Hidden Sword Villa, then it's not worth it." At that moment, Feng Qishao poked his head in and said, "Sect Master, why don't I go?" Seeing Feng Qishao, Dugu Li's face immediately darkened. "Why aren't you cultivating in the sword tower? Why are you here? Get lost and cultivate." Now, Dugu Li was angry at the sight of Feng Qishao. Although Feng Qishao's sword Dao talent was indeed shocking, and there had never been such a talented person in Sword King City in the past thousands of years. However, Dugu Li could not tolerate Feng Qishao's personality, especially to an old-fashioned and inflexible warrior like Dugu Li. Compared to Dugu Li, Heavenly King Shen was much more tolerant of Feng Qishao. Waving his hand, Heavenly King Shen said, "Come here and tell me. What right do you have to go? Just because you're good friends with Chu Xiu? If what you say makes sense, then I'll let you go. If not, then go back to the sword tower and cultivate. Don't come out if you have nothing to do." Feng Qishao walked in and said solemnly, "Sect Master, it's true that I'm good friends with Chu Xiu, but when have I ever harmed Sword King City's interests just because Chu Xiu is my good friend? I'm not bragging, but Chu Xiu and I have gone through many dangers together. We've been through life and death together. I even saved him before. If I go, at least you won't have to worry about Sword King City getting involved. If I go, Chu Xiu will have to give me face no matter what. When the time comes, I'll be able to handle things as I please. My identity will not bring shame to Sword King City. Isn't that great?" Dugu Li looked at Feng Qishao suspiciously. He seriously suspected that Feng Qishao just wanted to use this opportunity to go out and have fun. Heavenly King Shen thought for a moment and said, "All right, you'll go this time." Before Feng Qixiao could get excited, Heavenly King Shen said, "But I'm afraid you'll cause trouble and bring shame to Sword King City. Xingjian Hall's Bai Qian is a steady man. Let him go with you. Once the matter is settled, return to Sword King City immediately." Upon hearing Heavenly King Shen's words, Feng Qixiao's face immediately fell. At the same time, inside the Heartless Sword Mound in the 100,000 Mountains, there was a huge deep valley that was shrouded in fog all day long. One could not see the sun, but the faint sound of swords could be heard, even passing through the thick fog and resounding throughout the world. At the moment, in the deepest part of the deep valley, there were many long swords stabbed into the ground. Some were complete, while others were incomplete. However, next to these long swords stood a grave. This was the center of the Heartless Sword Mound, the famous place where swords were buried. At the moment, in the fog, there were several figures sitting there. Their bodies were thin and stiff, like dried corpses. Yan Ji of the Heartless Sword Mound stood to one side and told them everything that had happened in the hidden Sword Mountain Villa. However, there was only silence in the Sword Mound, as if he was really reporting everything to the dead. After a while, an old figure stood up and coughed. "Forget it. I'll make the trip. Brothers, it's not convenient for you to move, so don't trouble yourself." The old figure who stood up was the nameless old man who had fought in the battle of the Righteous Path and Demonic Path on Floating Jade Mountain. He was responsible for guarding the Sword Mound. At this moment, a faint voice came from the Sword Mound. "If there's a heaven and earth elemental enlightenment on the other side, you won't be able to handle it. Bring Fuyu with you to be safe." As soon as the voice finished, a beam of light shone from the Sword Mound. It looked like a small sword, but it disappeared into the nameless old man's body in an instant. The nameless old man nodded, bent his back, and slowly walked out of the Sword Mound. Within the forgetful sword hut, Shen Baochen received the news and frowned. He sighed. These are troubled times. As one of the 5 great sword sects, he could not just watch as something happened to the hidden Sword Mountain Villa. Furthermore, he also thought that Chu Xiao had been too high-profile recently. The forgetful sword hut had no intention of participating in these messy matters, but they could not ignore it. Therefore, Shen Baochen had to personally make a trip. However, before he left, Shen Baochen hesitated for a moment. He turned around and returned to his room. He carefully took out a scroll and placed it in the secret space box. In the past, the Heaven and Earth Elemental Enlightenment Warrior by Chu Xiao's side, who had withstood dozens of blows from Rama and not died, had attracted the attention of countless people in the Jianghu. Although no one knew who he was, there was an existence in the Heaven and Earth Elemental Enlightenment realm. Then, he had to be very careful in his actions. He did not want to fail to save the hidden Sword Mountain Villa and instead lose his life. Just as everyone was moving, the most anxious was still the hidden Sword Mountain Villa. There was no news, and Cheng Tingshan did not know how the other 3 sects would react. Therefore, during this period of time, the hidden Sword Mountain Villa had all their disciples maintain their vigilance. Even the sword formation was constantly in a state of being activated. At this moment, outside the hidden Sword Mountain Villa, Chu Xiao looked at the vigilant look of the hidden Sword Mountain Villa. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Is the hidden Sword Mountain Villa really prepared to fight to the end?" Lu Jiang he chuckled from within the Blood Soul Pearl. "Kid, it seems that your deterrence is not enough. In the past, when the sect leader was here, he wanted to see the collection of the hidden Sword Mountain Villa. That generation's hidden Sword Mountain Villa master personally brought the divine weapon long sword to the Kunlun Devil cult. However, the sect leader used a knife and did not care for those things. Chu Xiao said lightly, "If they did not take the initiative to send it, I would take the initiative to go and take it. The result would be the same. After this, the hidden Sword Mountain Villa will also be afraid of me. Of course, the premise is that after this, the hidden Sword Mountain Villa will still exist in the Jianghu." Chapter 902. Outside the hidden Sword Mountain Villa, Chu Xiao brazenly appeared at the main entrance and said in a low voice, "Villa Master Cheng, I would like to borrow your sword. I wonder if Villa Master Cheng is willing to part with it?" In that instant, Chu Xiao's voice rang through the entire hidden Sword Mountain Villa, causing all the martial artists in the hidden Sword Mountain Villa to tremble. Cheng Tingshan let out a long sigh. At a time like this, as the villa master, he had no place to hide. He could only step forward. He ordered his men to prepare the array in the hidden Sword Mountain villa. Chung Tingshan took a deep breath and pushed open the door. He said in a low voice, "Official Chu, please forgive me. The divine swords in the hidden Sword Mountain villa were all gathered by our ancestors with great effort. There has never been a rule of lending them to outsiders." Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Oh, no lending? All right then, I'll just snatch it. There's no need to break the rules." Hearing Chu Xiao's words, Chung Tingshan almost spat out blood. If he didn't lend it, he would snatch it. This Chu Xiao actually said it so confidently. How shameless could he be? Chung Tingshan wanted to say something but was interrupted by Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao said with a gloomy face, "Manor Lord Chung, no matter how forgetful you are, you shouldn't have forgotten the grudges between us in the past, right? You may have forgotten, but I haven't. I, Chu Xiao, am not an unreasonable person. If you hand over the sword, I will write off all the grudges and karma between us. On the other hand, if you don't know how to appreciate my kindness, then don't blame me for being ruthless. That's why I'm curious. Where did you get the confidence to reject my conditions? Is it because my blade, Chu Xiao, is not strong enough, or does your hidden Sword Mountain villa think that your head is tough enough? Cheng Tingshan, do you really think that I won't dare to kill your entire family?" A surging killing intent surged towards him. The powerful aura caused Chung Tingshan's face to turn pale. For so many years, Chu Xiao had fought in the Jianghu. What kind of people had he not killed and what kind of scenes had he not seen? Countless people had died directly or indirectly in his hands. Since he, Chu Xiao, had said that he would exterminate the entire clan, he would not leave anyone alive. This was not some mysterious thing like the words of law. Instead, it was the powerful killing intent that he had accumulated over the years. It was a horrifying killing intent. Official Chu, it's not good to have such a strong murderous aura. The Third Great War between the righteous and demonic factions just ended. Although you didn't lose, you didn't win either. In the past, when the moon-worshipping cult won the Second Great War, they weren't as arrogant as you are now. With a faint voice, Shen Baochen's figure descended from mid-air with an extraordinary aura. The one who came with Shen Baochen was the nameless elder from Wind Cloud Sword Tomb. He just stood there without saying a word. His expression was cold as if he was just watching the show. Chu Xiao raised his eyebrows. He was right. The 5 major sword sects would not sit back and watch as the hidden sword villa was destroyed. Arrogant? What's even more arrogant is yet to come. Do the two of you think that you can stop me with just the two of you? Shen Baochen took a step forward and said lightly, "Official Chu, you can try. The strong cultivator beside you is indeed in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. However, after the battle with divine monk Rama, I don't believe that he is not injured at all. The Forgetful Sword Hut and Wind Cloud Sword Tomb are not without a trump card. For a sword, Official Chu has to pay such a huge price. Is it worth it?" Shang Tianliang, who was standing beside Chu Xiao, snorted coldly. "Even if he is injured, I can still fight." Divine Monk Rama's strength was indeed very strong. Although Shang Tianliang's head-on fighting style had successfully blocked Rama, he had also been injured quite badly. He did not have the invincible demon elixir. Thus, at the moment, even though Chu Xiao had recovered, Shang Tianliang still had some injuries that had not recovered. Just as both sides were ready to fight, a voice suddenly rang out. "I say, everyone, this is just a small matter. There's no need to make such a big deal out of it, right?" Feng Qi Xiao and Bai Qian from Sword King City walked over from behind. He even greeted everyone with a cheeky smile. "Brother Chu, long time no see. No, to be precise, I just saw you a while ago, but you haven't seen me for a long time. Do you miss me?" "Oh, sect leader Shen of the Forgetful Sword Hut. You are really getting younger and younger. If you were just a little younger, I'm afraid you would steal all the limelight from us young heroes. This Wind Cloud Sword Tomb's nameless elder is still very healthy. It seems like living to 100 years is not a problem." "Wait, elder, how old are you?" Bai Qian, who was standing beside Feng Qi Xiao, almost wanted to find a hole in the ground to hide in. This was too embarrassing. However, it had to be said that after Feng Qi Xiao's jesting, the originally tense atmosphere eased a little. Chu Xiao nodded and said, It has indeed been a long time. I heard that you were grounded by Sword King City. You have now met the requirements of Sword King City, so you are allowed to come out of seclusion? Seventh young Master Fong smiled awkwardly. It was not easy for him to find such an excuse to go out, but he was still being watched. He reckoned that when he was truly free, he would either become the sect leader of Sword King City or defeat Heavenly King Shen and the other two. Shen Baochen frowned and said, "The Sword King City sent you?" Shen Baochen didn't mean to underestimate Feng Qixiao. Among all the young disciples of the 5 major sword sects, no one could compare with Feng Qixiao in terms of talent and potential. There were so many monstrous talents in this generation. Even compared with them, Feng Qixiao wouldn't be too inferior. As the heir of Sword King City, Feng Qixiao's position in the entire Sword King City might not be worse than Du Guli and the others. In fact, he might even be higher. This was because Du Guli represented a power that was close to decay, while 7th young Master Fong represented a bright and boundless future. But on this occasion, Sword King City only sent 2 real pellet state powerhouses. What's the use? Feng Qixiao smiled and said, "It doesn't matter how many people there are, as long as they are useful. Everyone, let's talk nicely. There's no need to fight and kill, right?" With that said, Feng Qixiao looked at Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Chu, give me face and say a few words calmly, how about it?" Chu Xiu said faintly, "I have always been calm. Of course, the premise is that I can get what I want." Feng Qixiao nodded and said, "Brother Chu, tell me the truth. Do you want to settle the old grudges with Sword Hidden Villa today? Or do you just want the divine sword Flowing Light Evil Moon?" Chu Xiu pointed to Cheng Tingshan and said, "To put it bluntly, now I, Chu Xiu, have countless enemies all over the world. Cheng Tingshan is really nothing. I have made it very clear in the invitation I sent to Sword Hidden Villa before. As long as Sword Hidden Villa can hand over Flowing Light Evil Moon, I can settle all the old grudges, but obviously, Villa Master Cheng doesn't seem to want to do so." Feng Qixiao looked at Cheng Tingshan, and Cheng Tingshan also gritted his teeth and said, "Young Master Feng, it's not that my Sword Hidden Villa is stubborn to the end, but there are rules. Everything else can be given, but the divine swords collected by my Sword Hidden Villa cannot be given. Today, Chu Xiu came to ask for it with his strength. My Sword Hidden Villa admitted defeat and gave it. If the moon-worshipping cult also comes to ask for it in the future, will my Sword Hidden Villa give it? Once this mouth is opened, my Sword Hidden Villa will never have a peaceful day. The sword is the life of my Sword Hidden Villa. If the divine sword is taken away, the life of my Sword Hidden Villa will be gone. Do you think this kind of thing can be given casually?" Feng Qixiao nodded in understanding. He suddenly asked, "Brother Chu, the Eternal Sword Sect's divine weapon, Wildfire, is with you, right?" Chu Xiu was stunned. He thought for a moment before nodding. When he destroyed the Eternal Sword Sect, he had indeed taken the divine weapon, Wildfire. However, there were very few sword-wielding warriors around him, so it was temporarily useless. Hence, the divine weapon was kept by Chu Xiu. Feng Qixiao chuckled and said, "That's easy. You have no use for the Wildfire. Why don't you trade it for Flowing Light Evil Moon? One divine sword for another. It's very fair. Brother Chu, Villa Master Cheng, what do you think?" As soon as Feng Qixiao said this, everyone looked at him in astonishment. Chu Xiu's target was the Flowing Light Evil Moon. The other Wildfire had been collecting dust in his secret space box for a long time, so it did not matter if he took it out. What surprised him the most was that Feng Qixiao, an unreliable fellow, could come up with such an idea. Shen Baochen had more or less the same thought. If it was not necessary, they really did not want to fight with Chu Xiu now. It would be best if this matter could be resolved in such a way. Bai Qian was actually the most surprised. As long as the Sword King City's warriors had been in serious contact with Feng Qixiao for a period of time, they would be worried about the future of Sword King City. Just the thought of Feng Qixiao being in charge of Sword King City in the future made them feel vexed. However, after looking at Feng Qixiao's methods, he was not stupid or naive. He just did not want to think about such things sometimes. As for the foolish things that 7th young Master Fong had done in the past, although it sounded a little speechless, he did not actually harm the Sword King City's interests. Bai Qian looked at Feng Qixiao thoughtfully. It seemed that everyone had underestimated him in the past. Feng Qixiao looked at Cheng Tingshan. Everyone was very satisfied with his idea. Only Cheng Tingshan was left. Cheng Tingshan gritted his teeth and was about to agree. Actually, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa was the one who was at a disadvantage. The Flowing Light Evil Moon was ranked 26th on the famous sword book, while the Wildfire was ranked 36th. There was a difference of 10 places. However, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa only wanted a reputation. As long as they did not directly give away the divine weapon, everything would be fine. However, at that moment, an old and agitated voice was suddenly heard. No. Absolutely not. Flowing Light Evil Moon, I has been nourishing it for decades. How can we hand it over to a demon like Chu Xiao? An elder of the Hidden Sword Villa actually ran out and roared, his face filled with excitement. In an instant, Cheng Tingshan's expression changed abruptly, while the smile on Chu Xiao's face turned into a sinister smile. Feng Qixiao sighed. There was nothing he could do if someone was courting death. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.